Understanding Self-Efficacy by Katie McEnany. Chapter 1. Believe in Yourself. Have you ever wanted to do something really difficult? Maybe you wanted to learn how to do a cartwheel, or solve a hard math problem, or beat the next level on a video game. All of these things take practice and hard work. However, they also take a belief in your own ability. That's called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that you have the ability to succeed at a task or achieve a goal. When you believe in yourself, you're more likely to approach challenges in a different way than someone who doesn't believe in their abilities. You might work harder, overcome challenges, and be an active participant in the activity. Self-efficacy is all about control and confidence. You believe that you can control your actions and attitude. You have confidence that you can do anything you set your mind to. If you believe in yourself, you can't lose. Chapter 2. What's your goal? If you're good at something, it's easy to have self-efficacy. A gymnast who has trained for years will believe they can land a cartwheel with no problem. A chef will believe they can cook a great meal. However, this belief has come with years of hard work and persistence. No one is good at everything, and no one is great at anything on the first try. That means many activities are challenges to overcome. The first step in achieving a certain outcome is defining your goal. What goal do you want to achieve? It can be a goal for your schoolwork. For example, you might want to get a good grade on your science project. It can be a social goal, such as joining a new club or community center. It can relate to an extracurricular activity, such as scoring a goal in soccer. Chapter 3. Self-awareness. Having self-efficacy is just one part of being self-aware. To be aware is to have knowledge of something. To be self-aware is to have knowledge of yourself. Have you ever seen the movie Inside Out? That movie shows how each person is made up of many complex emotions. You are also made up of your thoughts, including your opinions and judgments, and your values, or the things that are important to you. You are a one-of-a-kind human being, and you have the ability to be an expert on yourself by being self-aware. This skill helps you define your emotions, thoughts, and values, and assess your strengths and abilities. This helps you recognize your mindset when faced with a challenge. It can also tell you where you are in the process of achieving your goal and how you can achieve it in time. Chapter 4. Understand your strengths. Knowing your strengths is one part of self-awareness. Some students are better at writing than they are at math. However, other students may be better at math than they are at writing. When we know our strengths, we can use them to achieve our goals. First, write down a list of your strengths. What are you good at? What comes easily to you? What have you already worked on? You might be good at playing a sport, such as soccer or basketball. You might have a social strength, such as being a good listener or being respectful of others. How do you know what your strengths are? Think about the things people have praised you for in the past or the outcome of a past challenge. If you got an A on a computer programming assignment, coding might be one of your strengths. Chapter 5. The right attitude. Self-efficacy is all about approaching a challenge with the right attitude. If you think you can do something, then you'll work toward your goal with confidence. Self-confidence is the belief that you will succeed. People who are confident in their abilities are excited to work toward a goal. That attitude leads to motivation. Motivation means that you have a desire or want to do something. If you have motivation, then you're driven toward accomplishing a task or reaching a goal. But what if you don't have motivation to work toward something? Imagine you're trying to learn piano, but you don't want to practice. Think about why you want to learn to play piano. Make a list of small goals you can achieve on your way to being a great pianist. Stay positive about practicing, and remember, if you have the right attitude, you can do anything. Chapter 6. What's in your toolbox? Now you know your strengths and limitations. You have a can-do attitude and motivation. What else do you have? Before starting any big task, it's important to see what's in your toolbox. What do you have to work with? Some of the best things in your toolbox are your experiences. What have you already done that can help you reach your goal? What have you learned that can help you accomplish a task? Make a list of experiences that have to do with the task at hand. Imagine you want to paint a picture of an elephant for an art competition. You've never done this before, and it seems like a big task. You then remember the times when you've mixed paint colors, drawn other animals, and watched elephants at the zoo. You have plenty of experiences that will help you reach your goal. Chapter 7. Picture this. Another tool in your toolbox is your imagination. If you can picture yourself succeeding, then you will be more confident in your ability to reach your goal. This use of your imagination increases your belief in your own abilities. That will make you more likely to use the behaviors, such as practicing, that will get you closer to your goal. This skill is also called visualization. Try it out. Imagine that you're going to run a race. The race is longer than you've ever run before. However, you have months to train before the race happens. Close your eyes and think about what it would look and feel like to finish that race. What would you see? What would you hear? What emotions would you feel? This picture of success can help you keep going even when your legs are tired and you want to give up. Chapter 8. Watch and learn. So far, you've used the tools of past experience and imagined experience. What else is in your toolbox? What other experiences can you use? You can use the experience of others. Think of a teacher or mentor in your life who taught you a skill. Maybe your swim coach taught you how to swim the backstroke. That coach used knowledge they gained from their own experiences and passed it to you. You can learn a lot from other people just from observing or watching what they do. Watch a ballerina twirl around on a stage. Watch a family member cook dinner. Watch a snowboarder make their way down a hill. How do they accomplish the task? What does success look like? After you observe, ask questions. There's a lot to learn from others. And just remember, even an expert started out as a beginner. Chapter 9. Be persistent. Things worth achieving are rarely easy. That means you're going to face challenges along your path to success. However, the most important thing you can do in these moments is never give up. One of the biggest roadblocks to success is the idea that your strengths and limitations are fixed or unable to change. In this mindset, you're likely to say, "I'm just not good at science." However, you are always changing and learning and growing. With time, you can become strong at something or overcome a challenge. This is called a growth mindset. In this mindset, you might say, "I'm just not good at science yet." Being persistent or not giving up is one of the best tools for success. It means that you understand there will be challenges and that you might fail more than once, but you're willing to keep trying. Chapter 10. Make a game plan. You have all the tools you need and the right mindset. Can you achieve your goal? Yes, you can. Where do you start? In any problem-solving situation, it's smart to make a game plan. Your goal might be a big one, and that can make it scary. However, if you break down that big goal into smaller parts, you have a greater chance of succeeding. Plus, you can celebrate all the smaller victories on the way to achieving your big goal. You don't have to run a great distance right away. Just run around the block. Self-efficacy is like a superpower that you already have. All you have to do is believe in yourself, identify your emotions and strengths, grow your self-confidence, and use every experience you can to achieve your goal. With hard work, persistence, and the right mindset, you can do anything. Life on the International Space Station by Maria Nelson. All aboard! Right now, 6 people are living and working aboard a huge structure that orbits Earth more than 15 times a day. They're crew members on the International Space Station, ISS. If you look up at the right time, you might be able to see their home. The brave men and women who have set foot on the ISS come from all over the world. Crew members have included astronauts trained by NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the ESA, European Space Agency, as well as Russian cosmonauts. What's it like living in space? It can be pretty extreme. Who's up there? Have you ever wanted to be an astronaut? Hundreds of people apply to NASA's training program. Only a few are selected about every 2 years. Those who are chosen come from a variety of backgrounds. Some have worked in medicine or scientific research. Others are members of the military. Everyone who trains to live and work aboard the ISS has to have some knowledge of all the tasks that need to be done. But previous experiences, like working as a computer scientist or engineer, make an astronaut especially good at 1 or 2 jobs on the station. More than 200 people have visited or lived on the ISS. In 2011 and 2012, 6 astronauts flew up to the ISS to become its new crew. Before becoming astronauts, these crew members worked in fields that prepared them well for the tough work on the ISS. Cosmonauts Oleg Kononenko and Sergei Revin worked as engineers. Astronaut Don Petit worked in a lab studying gravity and performing space-related experiments. Gennady Paldaka served in the Russian Air Force, and Joseph Akaba is a geologist and a former U.S. Marine. Andrei Capers, an ESA astronaut, is a doctor who served in the Royal Netherlands Air Force. Which way is up? The weightless feeling you get when floating in water is close to what astronauts feel aboard the ISS. It's caused by very low gravity, or microgravity. Forces don't pull on people or objects as on Earth, so there's no up or down on the ISS. Heavy objects are easy to move. This can take some getting used to. ISS crew members often feel sick to their stomach or get headaches when they first encounter microgravity on the ISS. It also changes how blood moves around the body. Crew members' faces look puffy, and their legs look skinnier as more blood gets moved to the upper body. Night or day? Have you ever been woken by the sun shining through your window? Imagine that happening every 90 minutes. As the ISS orbits Earth, the sun rises and sets about 16 times in 24 hours. It's hard to know when it's night or day. To help them get enough rest, crew members are each scheduled for 8 hours of sleep a day. The ISS has 2 small cabins about the size of closets for crew members to sleep in. Crew also have sleeping bags that attach to the wall. But some crew members use microgravity to float around the station while sleeping instead. Sticking to the plan, or tray. When you're hungry, you can just grab a snack. For those living on the ISS, even that takes work. First, each astronaut has a meal plan to follow. This helps them take in the right nutrients. Second, microgravity doesn't allow someone to just open a bag of popcorn. Instead, each food item is packaged by itself. The crew prepares and eats one item at a time or attaches the packages to a tray so they stay put. Meals are important for another reason. They're scheduled time for the crew to hang out. Each astronaut is part of the ISS community and needs to feel at home. Keeping clean. It may sound funny, but the ISS has bathrooms too. What happens to the waste? When astronauts flush the toilet, a vacuum system sucks solid waste into a storage system that's emptied later. Urine or liquid waste may be sent into space to burn up in Earth's atmosphere. Some is recycled into water for the crew to use. While that might seem gross, it's an important process because the crew can only bring so much water to the ISS at a time. The crew also saves water by using wipes to clean themselves. They've got a job to do. The ISS's main purpose is research. Altogether, the crew members log about 160 hours a week doing experiments. From studying the effects of medicines to tracking pollution swirling around Earth, crew members work with scientists on the ground to learn more about space, our planet, and the human body. Did you know the crew of the ISS is the subject of an experiment too? Their bodies are closely watched to find out how they act in microgravity. Even their waste is studied to see what nutrients they need more or less of while working in space. This knowledge can help future astronauts live off-planet. It took more than 40 flights and 13 years to bring all the pieces of the ISS into space. The first crews that lived on the ISS had a big job, putting the pieces together. Now that the ISS is fully assembled, the crew takes care of the station. They update computer systems and make sure equipment is in good working order. They even have to clean. While this isn't always the most exciting work, the astronauts know it's important since for a few months at least, the ISS is their home. Besides, part of maintaining the ISS is pretty exciting, the spacewalk. What to wear? Most of the time, ISS crew members are in the controlled conditions of the space station. They wear comfortable clothes that they change every 3 days. Then they throw them away. An ISS crew member's most extreme situation calls for a pretty extreme wardrobe. Spacewalks require an astronaut to wear a spacesuit. The suit supplies oxygen for the astronaut to breathe and keeps the body at the right pressure. Each spacesuit can be changed to fit an astronaut's needs. They're worn for about 25 spacewalks before they're returned to Earth to be cleaned and repaired. Downtime. ISS crew members spend their free time doing many of the same things you do. They exercise, play cards, and watch movies together. There's not a lot of privacy on the ISS. Hobbies such as reading or listening to music with headphones can give hardworking crew members needed alone time too. Some crew members do their own experiments or take pictures of space. One crew even took an electric piano with them. Astronauts get homesick sometimes. Crew members spend a lot of time keeping in touch with their families and friends at home. They email and even talk to them. Safety first. Working aboard the ISS can be extremely dangerous. However, astronauts are prepared for most risky situations. If an astronaut becomes unattached from the station during a spacewalk, the spacesuit has a jetpack to help them fly back. Astronauts carry extra oxygen just in case there's a tear in a spacesuit, too. In 2003, 7 astronauts died when the Space Shuttle Columbia broke into pieces as it entered Earth's atmosphere. This reminded NASA of the many problems that could occur on missions and on the ISS. For about 2 years, ISS construction stopped as extra safety measures were put in place across all NASA's space programs. Working together. Crew members aboard the ISS have one of the coolest jobs in the universe. It's also one that can be lonely and scary. For months at a time, the crew members see only each other. While this creates a tight-knit community, it's hard to have such limited privacy. Astronauts miss their families, homes, and wide-open spaces, too. However, the ISS crew is a well-trained group of astronauts who help each other through tough days of staring into the blackness of space. They recognize their work is important. Who knows? What we learn from the ISS crew today could help us live off-planet tomorrow. Life on an Oil Rig by Drew Nelson. What is an offshore oil rig? In 2011, oil companies in the United States produced about 5.7 million barrels of crude oil per day. Crude oil is turned into fuel that runs cars, heats homes, and provides power for many other things. A lot of this oil comes from offshore oil rigs. An oil rig is actually a piece of machinery that's used for drilling oil both onshore and offshore. But many people call the whole structure around the drill an oil rig. Offshore oil rigs, also called oil platforms, are home to some of the most extreme jobs in the world. History of offshore drilling. Offshore oil rigs were first designed almost 150 years ago. In 1869, a man named T.F. Rowland got a patent for the first offshore drilling platform. It was made to work in very shallow water, but it looked similar to many current models. The whole structure was supported by 4 legs that reached down to the ocean floor. In 1947, the first offshore rig so far out that it couldn't be seen from shore was built in the Gulf of Mexico. Since then, oil rigs have been constructed offshore all around the world. Man-made islands. Permanent offshore oil rigs have everything the workers need to live on board for months at a time. Most of the space on a platform is taken up by equipment such as the drills and pumps that bring the oil out of the ground. There are also offices where computers monitor the drilling and where records are kept. The rest of the space is for the workers. There are small living areas, places for visitors to stay, a cafeteria, and a kitchen or galley. All rigs are different, but some might have a restaurant, a coffee house, a gym, or even a movie theater. How do oil platforms get out in the middle of the ocean? First, pieces of the platform are built onshore. Then each piece is loaded onto a ship and taken out to where it will be placed in the water. Sometimes, these pieces are put together before or even while they're being transported. However, usually everything is put together once the ship or ships get to the platform's location. Some rigs are fixed platforms, which means they're attached to the ocean floor. Their underwater pieces are put in place first. Other rigs are kept in place by anchors. Sometimes the ocean floor is just too deep for legs. Other types of offshore rigs. Besides offshore oil platforms, other structures are used for drilling underwater. Drilling barges are towed to a location and left floating on the surface. They're used in shallow, still waters that won't move the barge much. Jack-up rigs are like drilling barges, except once they're in position, 3 or 4 legs are lowered to the ocean floor to hold them in place. Drill ships are large boats capable of both drilling into the ocean floor and transporting oil back to land. Drill ships have a system of motors and computers that keep them in place over an oil deposit. Different rig jobs. There are many different jobs that keep an offshore oil rig working. Roustabouts are people who live on the oil rig and do a bit of everything. They repair drill parts, check pumps, and also do simple but necessary jobs like painting and cleaning. After working as a roustabout, people move up to become roughnecks. Roughnecks do much of the actual drilling work. They also put the drills together and replace parts. Roughnecks make sure the drills operate correctly and sometimes climb into giant holes with the equipment to figure out the problem. While roustabouts and roughnecks work on the deck and do most of the physical work that goes into oil drilling, other kinds of workers are needed as well. Drillers supervise the roughnecks and the drilling process. They also give out daily assignments to other workers. Engineers work on mechanical parts of the platform both above and under the water. Electricians make sure the electrical power on the rig is working well, and mechanics work with all the machines. Medics are also on hand to care for sick or hurt workers when needed. When workers on offshore oil rigs aren't working or resting, they're eating. And even though they're out in the middle of the ocean, they eat more than just fish. Yet another job on an oil rig, and an important one, is the cook. The cook makes 4 to 6 meals a day since workers have different shifts and schedules. They make the same meals that workers get on land. But if storms keep supplies from being delivered to the rig, cooks have to get creative with their meals. Sometimes, though, they grill steaks out on the deck. Danger. There are many dangers on an offshore oil rig. On parts of the deck, only a floor grate keeps workers from falling into the ocean. Cranes swing heavy pieces of equipment across the deck. Many drilling tools are sharp and powerful and could hurt a worker if not used carefully. An oil well can have a blowout, which is an uncontrolled release of oil that flows up and out of the well. And almost everything on the platform has oil or gasoline on it or in it. This can make many things on the platform quickly catch fire or even explode. Safe and sound. Because of the many dangers, safety is a major concern on oil platforms. Several measures are usually in place to help keep everyone safe. People working on the platform wear safety hats, protective clothing, and plastic glasses. Workers have to deal with extremely loud noises coming from the machines as well as blowing winds. They often can't hear others yelling to them. Safety signs are located around every part of the deck. Even though the workers have been trained, it's good for them to have reminders to be safe. They practice emergency drills every day. In case of emergency. With all the dangers that exist on an oil platform, there's always the chance there will be an emergency situation, such as a fire or a strong storm. Even though crews perform drills to prepare for these, there's actually very little they can do to get away. Most platforms have escape pods, which are like lifeboats. Workers get into pods and are lowered into the ocean. They float on the water until help arrives. When a platform is many miles away from shore, the crew might have to wait in the pods for hours before they're rescued. Happy holidays! Besides working long shifts, many people on offshore oil rigs work overnight too. The drill must operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so someone always needs to be watching the equipment. Many employees work these long and late shifts for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. After those weeks, they get about 3 weeks off so they can go back to shore. This means that oil rig employees don't work about 60% of the year. Some workers spend this time with their families on shore. If you're looking for extreme, life on an offshore oil rig is extreme. The work is hard and dangerous, the hours are long, and the living takes some getting used to. But many people love it. They choose to go out on the open water for the good pay and many vacation days. Many oil rig jobs don't require special education. For example, roustabouts and roughnecks learn on the job. Engineers and mechanics need advanced education, though. Everyone who wants to work on an oil rig has to be strong, smart, and ready to live in extreme conditions. Life on an Aircraft Carrier by Heather Moore Niver. A City on Water. Aircraft carriers, also simply called carriers, carry airplanes and other aircraft. They're also floating airfields. Carriers are the backbone of the U.S. Navy. They transport thousands of soldiers and everything they need to travel on the ocean for months. Because of this, carriers are sometimes called cities on the sea. Since carriers transport weapons, almost any job on board is dangerous. Planes launch and land on a carrier's deck at very high speeds. These aircraft carry bombs and missiles, so a small mistake can mean a big explosion. The pilots and crew on a carrier live with danger all day, every day, even in times of peace. A quick look. The main body of a ship that floats in the water is called the hull. The flat area at the top of the carrier is called the flight deck. This is where aircraft take off and land. The island is a building on top of the flight deck. From here, officers watch what's going on and direct the crew. Lots of action goes on below deck, too. A power plant creates electricity, and a propulsion system moves the carrier. Aircraft are stored in a large covered space called a hangar. Also on the lower decks are living areas where sailors eat, sleep, and relax when they're off duty. Serious ships. The U.S. Navy uses 3 classes of aircraft carriers: Enterprise, Nimitz, and Ford. The Enterprise ships each have 8 nuclear reactors. Enterprise was the first class of carrier powered by nuclear energy. These carriers are 1,040 feet, 317 meters long, and hold about 80 aircraft. They travel through the water at speeds of more than 30 knots, which is 35 miles, 56 kilometers per hour. Nimitz carriers are the largest class. They're 24 stories, or 244 feet, 74 meters high, and can carry more than 5,000 sailors. The flight deck is 1,092 feet, 333 meters long. That's longer than 3 football fields. Like the Enterprise class, Nimitz carriers are nuclear-powered. However, each Nimitz needs only 2 nuclear reactors. These supply plenty of power and allow more space for storage. The Nimitz ships can carry 50% more ammunition than most carriers and almost double the amount of aircraft fuel. The newest class of carrier is the Ford, which is expected to set sail in 2015. Ford carriers will have 2 nuclear reactors, just like the Nimitz. They'll be 1,092 feet, about 333 meters long, and reach speeds of more than 30 knots, or 35 miles, 56 kilometers per hour. Close quarters. It might seem cool to have a job sailing around the world and seeing new countries and people. Much of the time, however, crew members of a carrier don't see much besides the boat. Some sailors who work below deck might not see the sky for weeks at a time. Most don't get the great views from the flight deck. This part of the ship has planes flying in and out, making it much too hectic and dangerous to allow extra people to walk around. Though the top of the island is safer, it's just a small space. All colors on deck. With so much dangerous activity happening on the carrier's flight deck, sailors have to really focus on their jobs. Not a moment can be spared. To make everyone's role easy to recognize, each sailor on this deck wears a colored shirt or jersey to indicate their role. If there's ever a problem on a carrier, the color-coded shirts make it easy to spot someone who can help. Sailors wear helmets with different colors to give more details about their job. Helmets may match the shade of their shirt or include additional colors. Crew in training wear yellow helmets bearing the letters UI, which mean under instruction. Pilots wear green or tan flight suits, different from the flight deck jerseys. They might have the most extreme carrier job. To take off, a plane needs to gain a lot of speed in a short distance. A machine called a catapult uses steam pressure to launch aircraft into the air. A jet can go from 0 to 165 miles, 265 kilometers per hour, in just seconds this way. Landing on a carrier is even more dangerous. To keep from rolling off the runway, a tailhook is located at the back of the plane. The pilot lands so the hook snags a wire called the arresting wire, which stops the speeding plane. There are 4 sets of arresting wires on the flight deck. The first set is dangerously close to the edge of the deck. Snagging the second set is acceptable, but pilots usually aim for the third. The pilot has to figure out how to angle the aircraft to land exactly right. Landing signal officers, in white shirts, use radio commands and a system of lights to guide the pilot. If the pilot sees a yellowish-brown light in line with green lights, the plane is on target. When the plane hits the deck, the pilot accelerates because the plane needs power to take off if it doesn't catch the arresting wires. Yellow shirts. Engines roar and blades spin as planes, jets, and helicopters prepare to take off from the flight deck runway. Catapult and plane handling officers in yellow shirts are on their guard every second. The deck is so loud crew members can't hear each other speak. Yellow shirts direct pilots and crew with arm and body signals. Many signals are used on the deck. For example, to show that it's not clear for aircraft to take off, a handling officer holds out a hand just below the waist and gives a thumbs down sign. At night, yellow wands with lights make movements more visible. Purple shirts. Fuel technicians in purple shirts handle all fuel on the carrier. Aircraft depend on fuel technicians to keep them moving. So do forklifts and dollies, wheeled platforms used to move objects. Fuel technicians might handle up to 200,000 gallons, 757,000 liters of fuel on the carrier in just one day. Below deck, they check fuel quality carefully. A single spark could cause a huge explosion. During combat, purple shirts refuel aircraft in the middle of the action. Sometimes they have to hot pump, which means they move fuel to a plane or jet with live missiles, whirling blades, and aircraft landing all around. Red shirts. Not every sailor is cut out for the dangerous job of a munitions expert. Munitions are weapons and ammunition. Munitions experts work below deck to put bombs and missiles together. Then they carefully move them through the carrier up to the flight deck. They take special routes and elevators far from the rest of the crew in case one of the missiles or bombs accidentally detonates or explodes. On deck, munitions experts load the munitions onto the jets. Their bright red shirts are easy to spot and alert other crew members that they're carrying weapons. The ConRep team. Sailors who move fuel and other goods from a supply ship to the carrier are part of the Connected Replenishment, or CONREP team. Replenishment simply means refueling or restocking, but this too can be dangerous on an aircraft carrier. Millions of gallons of flammable fuel are transported from ship to carrier through hoses. 2 pairs of sailors are needed for CONREP. Helmsmen steer the carrier, which has to sail in line next to the fuel ship. Boatswain's mates work on the deck to move supply crates. Besides the danger of fuel fire, a snapping cable could slice a sailor in half. Search and rescue crew. Though it doesn't happen often, sometimes aircraft crash or land in the water. When this happens, search and rescue swimmers spring into action. After only a couple of minutes, they have their gear ready and take off in a rescue helicopter. They're lowered down on cables or jump right from the helicopter into the waters. Then they're pulled back into the helicopter along with the rescued crew members. Day or night, warm or freezing waters, search and rescue teams are focused on saving lives. They, like all crew on an aircraft carrier, perform their extreme jobs the best they can for their country. Life on a Submarine by Mark Harasimu. Come aboard! Imagine working in a 3-story, windowless building that's a bit longer than a football field. Now fill it with more than 100 people and add a nuclear reactor and weapons. Place that building underwater for months at a time. When you serve on a U.S. Navy submarine, that's what your workplace and home are like. Every sailor on a submarine has already been to at least 7 weeks of Navy basic training and has asked to serve on a submarine. They've been tested to make sure they can live in tight, enclosed spaces. They've also attended special schools to learn skills they'll need on board. Submariners. On their first voyage, a Navy submarine crew member is called a NUB, non-useful body. Over a period of time, the crew member studies and learns about all the submarine's different systems. This is so that the crew can perform well in emergency situations and do each other's jobs if needed. Once the crew member passes certain tests, they become a QUAL, qualified in submarines. Jobs on board include electricians, engineers, reactor technicians, weapons technicians, sonar operators, navigators, cooks, and supply specialists. The crew is led by a commanding officer and an executive officer who's second in command. Air and water. Submarines couldn't go far without air and water. Early submarines once had to surface to pull in fresh air. Modern submarines can stay underwater for several months. They have machines to make fresh air and water. Machines called scrubbers remove carbon dioxide from the old air. Dust and other pollution are taken out too. Then, electricity splits water molecules, or tiny bits of water, to free the oxygen needed to make fresh air. Fresh water is made from seawater, which has been distilled to remove salt and other matter. Crew members, called machinist mates, are responsible for the air and water systems on a submarine. Up and down. Machinist mates and other engineers are also responsible for the systems that float or sink the submarine. Submarines have ballast tanks to help them go under or up to the surface. The ballast tanks are filled with air when a submarine is on the surface. If the submarine needs to go underwater or submerge, water is let in to the bottom of the ballast tanks and air is let out. Since water is heavier than air, the submarine goes underwater. Different tanks, called trim tanks, can be filled with a mix of water and air. The mix controls the depth of the submarine between the seafloor and the surface. Navigation and sonar. Navigation technicians use charts, computers, and GPS, Global Positioning System, to aid in guiding the submarine. They also work with sonar operators. Submarines mainly use passive sonar. This type of sonar listens to the sounds produced by objects in the ocean around the submarine. A sonar operator can conclude information from these sounds, such as the type and speed of a ship. When using active sonar, a sonar operator sends a sound into the water, a ping. The sonar operator listens to the echo to learn about the objects around the submarine. This helps the operator know how close the submarine is to the ocean floor, too. Nuclear power. You've probably heard of nuclear bombs. They work through the process of fission. Almost all U.S. Navy submarines today are powered by nuclear reactors. Reactors also use fission to create energy that heats water and makes steam. These things are needed to run engines and generators. Many skilled and alert submariners are needed to maintain a submarine's nuclear reactor. There's even a Navy nuclear power school that trains crew for working with this equipment. Reactor technicians watch for dangerous leaks. Every submarine has a specially trained welder to do emergency repairs to the reactor. SSNs. SSN is the label for the U.S. Navy's attack submarines. SS means submarine, and N means nuclear-powered. They're also called fast attacks or hunter killers. As these names suggest, SSNs are meant to seek and destroy enemy submarines and surface ships. The submarines carry sensors to find enemy targets and guide weapons. SSNs carry Tomahawk cruise missiles, which can be used to attack targets on shore and even objects hundreds of miles from the ocean. SSNs also lay mines underwater where enemy ships are likely to travel. When a ship makes contact, the mine explodes. SSBNs and SSGNs. SSBNs are some of the most destructive vessels in the U.S. Navy. SSBNs, nicknamed bombers, each carry up to 24 nuclear missiles. A missile has several warheads that can be dropped on a number of targets. The SSBNs in service today belong to the Ohio class. They're each named for a U.S. state, except one, the USS Henry M. Jackson. Jackson was a U.S. Senator. SSGN is the label for the Navy's guided missile submarines. These submarines are former SSBNs that have been changed or altered so they can carry conventional or non-nuclear missiles. The SSGNs have also been altered to transport up to 66 Special Operations soldiers along with the regular crew. The commanding officer. Since submarines are some of the most dangerous military craft, they need a steady hand and a clear mind at the controls. The commanding officer is the leader who makes sure all systems on the submarine run smoothly. Before being appointed to this position, they spend time as the head of the engineering, weapons, and operations departments on both SSNs and SSBNs. The commanding officer of a submarine is usually a commander or a lieutenant commander, but is referred to as the captain. The commanding officer is sometimes one of the few people on the submarine who knows where the submarine is to be stationed during its time at sea. To the rescue! Even with a skilled crew and safety systems on board, things can still go wrong on submarines. In 1963, the U.S. Navy submarine Thresher had an equipment failure near Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The reactor shut down, and the submarine sank to the bottom of the ocean. The water pressure destroyed the submarine. All 129 men aboard died. In response, the Navy built the DSRV, or Deep Submergence Rescue Vehicle. The DSRV can be brought anywhere in the world by airplane. Once at a location, it can rescue submarine crew as deep as 5,000 feet, 1.5 kilometers. Detected. Because they're dangerous, submarines are one of the biggest enemy targets. There are several methods, besides sonar, to detect enemy submarines. Hydrophones, or underwater listening equipment, can be placed in the water. Aircraft may carry a magnetic anomaly detector, or MAD, which locates a large amount of metal in water such as the body of a submarine. Once detected, a submarine faces several threats. Torpedoes may be fired from ships, submarines, or aircraft. The torpedo uses active sonar to find its underwater target. It doesn't even have to hit the submarine. An explosion near a submarine might be enough to destroy it. Other underwater vessels. Military submarines aren't the only underwater vessels. Submarines are also used for studying the deepest parts of the ocean and the creatures that live there. Smaller submarines used for deep-sea exploration are called submersibles. Some submersibles travel to places even more extreme than military submarines. In 1960, the Trieste took 2 men down to the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, the deepest part of any ocean in the world. They descended 35,800 feet, 10,900 meters. At the bottom, the 2 men in the Trieste saw a strange kind of fish. At that time, some scientists thought fish couldn't live at such depths. Take a tour. If you would like to know what it's like to serve on a submarine, there are places you can visit. The only submarine museum operated by the U.S. Navy is the Submarine Force Museum. Located in Groton, Connecticut, the museum contains photographs and objects from the beginnings of the U.S. Navy's submarine force to the present day. At the museum, you can also tour the Nautilus, the first nuclear submarine and the first to visit the North Pole. And if you can't go to the museum, you can take an online tour on their website, www.ussnautilus.org. Life at a Polar Research Station by Arthur K. Britton. The bottom of the world. Antarctica is one of the most extreme places on Earth. It surrounds the South Pole at the bottom of the world. Thick layers of ice and snow cover Antarctica. It's extremely cold. Winter temperatures reach minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 70 degrees Celsius. In summer, it rarely gets above freezing. Winds that can exceed 100 miles, 160 kilometers per hour, make it feel much colder. Dark and light are extreme in Antarctica, too. For several months in winter, it's always dark. In summer, the sun never sets. Would you like to live there? Probably not. But some people go enthusiastically. They work at polar research stations. Antarctic research stations. Today, Antarctica is home to more than 40 research stations operated by 18 countries from around the world. Some stations are small, while others are large. For example, England's Halley Research Station currently has 7 buildings. The United States' McMurdo Station has about 85 buildings. Many stations are built near the coast or on nearby islands. This makes it easier for people and supplies to reach them. In some places, the station buildings are on poles that raise them above the snow and ice. This is to keep them from being buried by snow or even crushed by the snow's weight. The station buildings have laboratories for scientists. They have places to keep snowmobiles and other equipment. Of course, the stations also have places for people to sleep and eat. What happens at these stations? Research, naturally. Scientists go to Antarctica to do all kinds of research. They study the ocean, weather, climate change, biology, geology, and even astronomy. And scientists aren't the only people at the stations. People with many different skills are needed to keep the stations running smoothly and make the research possible. Let's take a look at what some of the jobs are like at an Antarctic research station. Extremely cold science. When you're a scientist in Antarctica, even getting dressed is extreme. Several layers of lightweight clothing are needed to provide the required warmth and freedom of movement. Imagine how long it takes to get dressed. Even scientists' equipment may need clothing
for protection from the extreme cold. For example, mitten-like cases may be used to keep cameras from freezing. Simple tasks become hard when you're working in extremely cold, windy conditions. Fingers become painful, stop working, and freeze. Work at higher elevations adds another challenge. The air has less oxygen, so every motion requires more effort.
Scientists sometimes work in the field. That is, they work at a location far from the research station. They may go for a few days or as long as 3 months. So where do scientists live while they're working in the field? In tents. Of course, their tents aren't like ordinary camping tents. They're specially made to stand up to the high winds and sharp grains of ice blown by the winds. An airbed, sheepskin, and special ground sheet provide protection from the cold ground. Scientists sleep in extra thick and warm sleeping bags, too. Keeping stations working. The scientists' research is only possible because of the work done by the support staff. There are usually 4 or 5 technical staff members for every scientist. One important technical person is the machinist. A machinist is someone who uses machine tools to make parts. In Antarctica, a machinist makes parts for research equipment. Not only is such equipment specialized, but of course it also has to work in extreme conditions. For example, there are telescopes that must be able to endure temperatures as low as minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 73 degrees Celsius. What happens when scientists' electronic instruments break down? Fortunately, there are electronics technicians to repair them. Each station must provide for itself the basic goods and services usually supplied by businesses and governments. For example, you buy electricity from a power company. In Antarctica, there are no power companies. Each station must produce its own electricity. It uses generators, batteries, solar power, wind power, or a combination of these. Making sure the electrical system operates properly is extremely important. Not only does the research depend on it, so do people's lives. The person with this huge responsibility is the station engineer. The engineer oversees all other technical systems too. Engineers also set up and operate instruments for scientists' research. Water is necessary for life. Humans can't survive long without drinking water. People also use water for cooking. Modern conveniences, such as showers and toilets, require water. However, getting water in Antarctica isn't easy. In fact, there's an engineer in charge of water at research stations. On the frozen continent, there's very little liquid fresh water. A water production system melts snow to make water for drinking, cooking, bathing, and toilets. Wastewater must be dealt with too. Just dumping it outside would harm Antarctica's ecosystem. To handle this matter, stations have water treatment systems. Antarctic research stations have bulldozers for clearing snow and other vehicles for hauling people and equipment. Even under the best conditions, vehicles need regular maintenance and repair. Vehicles in Antarctica's extreme conditions need even more care. So research stations have mechanics. When they're not caring for vehicles, the mechanics work on the station's technical systems. Mechanics and other staff also help with less interesting, though important, tasks. They repair tents, clean the station's surroundings after work, sort waste, and prepare waste vessels to be taken to the coast and shipped out. There's always work to be done. Caring for people. What happens if someone at an Antarctic research station gets sick or hurt? Fortunately, there's a clinic with medicine, supplies, and equipment to treat many illnesses and injuries. There's even a place to perform operations. At some stations, the doctor can video conference with distant doctors for advice. The clinic doctor faces extreme challenges. A serious illness or injury could occur suddenly.
The right medicine, supplies, or equipment for a particular illness or injury might not be on hand. The doctor must work with what they have. It's a job that requires years of experience dealing with unexpected, often serious problems in challenging conditions. To keep well, people also need to eat well. That's especially true in extreme conditions, such as those found in Antarctica. So the preparation of food at research stations is an important job. Larger stations usually have a chef. At smaller stations, people often take turns doing the cooking. The chef usually must work with dried, canned, or frozen food. In fact, because food may be stored outside, even the dried and canned food may become frozen. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and meat are only available occasionally. Yet the chefs always work hard to prepare healthy, appealing meals. They may even bake cakes to celebrate birthdays. Be a virus warrior. A Kid's Guide to Keeping Safe. Eloise McGregor. What is a virus? A virus is a type of germ. They are very, very tiny, so you can't see them. When they get inside your body, they can make you sick. Viruses look like this, but a gazillion times smaller. There are lots of different types of viruses. There is a cold virus, a chickenpox virus, a flu virus, and coronavirus. People are talking a lot about coronavirus right now. Scientists have noticed a new coronavirus germ called COVID-19. It causes an illness a little like the flu. How do you catch a virus? Viruses enter your body through your nose, mouth, or eyes. Viruses can be passed from person to person. When a person coughs or sneezes, they spray the virus into the air. Another person might then breathe the virus in through their nose or mouth. You might catch a virus by holding someone's hand, or giving them a kiss, or hugging them. Germs can be left on things an ill person has touched. If you touch the same thing and then touch your face, you might catch the virus. Try to keep a distance of about 3 to 6 feet from people with coughs or sneezes. Wash your hands often and don't touch your face. How does a virus make you feel? Different viruses can make you sick in different ways. You might get a fever. You may feel warm or have chills, a headache, a runny nose, a cough, a sore throat, a rash, aches and pains. You may feel weak, diarrhea or tummy pain, or feel sick or short of breath. The symptoms of coronavirus are a cough, a fever, shortness of breath. Having these symptoms doesn't mean you have coronavirus. You might have a cold or the flu. If you have been near someone with coronavirus or been somewhere people have coronavirus, then you might have the illness. How do you keep yourself and other people safe from a virus? If you feel unwell, you need to be careful not to spread your germs. Sneeze, cough, and blow your nose into a tissue. Then throw the tissue away. If you can't find a tissue, sneeze or cough into the inside of your elbow. You could wear a mask if you feel unwell to keep you from spreading your germs. What are the best ways to make sure you don't catch a virus? 1. Wash your hands with soap. A lot. 2. Do not touch your face. Your hands may have picked up germs that can get in your nose, eyes, or mouth. 3. Try to stay away from anyone who appears unwell or anyone who has been with people who are unwell. They may look fine, but may be carrying a virus. How do I wash my hands properly? Wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. That's about the same time as singing Happy Birthday all the way through twice. Follow the routine below.
Wet hands with water. Use soap. Rub your palms together. Cross your fingers and palms. Then cross fingers, backs of hands together. Clean the backs of your hands. Clean your thumbs. Clean your fingernails and the ends of your fingers. Clean your wrists. Rinse with water. Dry your hands well with a clean paper towel and throw it away. Keeping away from others. To stop a virus from spreading, sometimes you may be asked to keep yourself away from other people. Your school may shut, and events you wanted to go to might be canceled. You may even have to stay in your home, which doctors call self-isolation. It's important to make sure you do as you are asked. Some people might get very ill if they catch a virus. Old people and people who are already ill need to be protected. It can actually be fun to be in isolation. You can watch some movies, play board games, read a book, do some coloring. How can you germ bust your home? Easy! Keep your hands clean and clean the places people touch often in your home. Soap and cleaning spray can kill viruses. Use a paper towel to wipe surfaces clean. Viruses can survive a long time on surfaces. Wipe commonly used surfaces, door handles, and light switches. Then throw away the paper towel and wash your hands. Think your family might not wash their hands as well as you? Their not very clean hands may have touched that faucet. You can turn some faucets on and off using your elbows like doctors do, or turn them using a paper towel. Hugging? Kissing? Maybe not. Think you may be unwell? Or is a friend or member of your family ill? You may want to change how close you get to them for now. Germs can get passed on easily through a handshake or a kiss. It is a good idea to not kiss and hug if someone has a virus. You can still show people that you care. You can give them a smile, or bump elbows, or make them a get well card. Can doctors cure a virus? You can be protected against some viruses by being given a vaccine. A vaccine is medicine that helps you fight a virus. There are vaccines for chickenpox and flu. You may have had some vaccines when you were a baby. What can you do if you or your family get ill with a virus? Don't worry. Most people are only ill for a few days. Stay at home and call the doctor. Go to bed. Open the window a little if you can. Drink plenty. Make sure you don't spread the virus to anyone else. Pretty soon, you will be better. Life on a Commercial Fishing Boat by Oscar Sylvester. Not a day at the beach. When you think of fishing, you might think of a fun day in a boat. When you're tired, you can go home to relax. But for a commercial fisherman, a normal day on the job isn't quite so enjoyable. Fishermen may not come ashore for weeks or even months. During that time, they work many hours each day. A fisherman stays on the job whether it's calm or stormy. Even on a beautiful day, commercial fishermen face the danger of a rogue wave overturning their boat. Fishermen face some of the most extreme conditions in their work, making their job one of the most dangerous in the world.
Shocking numbers. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that fishermen are more likely to lose their lives on the job than police officers and security guards. To add to that, the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, reported that more than 500 fishermen died in the last 10 years.
But what's so dangerous about fishing? More than half these fishermen lost their lives after their boats flooded or were struck by bad weather. About 1/3 fell overboard.
1/10 were injured on the boat. All others were hurt diving or doing onshore jobs.
Fishing in Alaska. As risky as commercial fishing is all over the world, Alaskan fishermen experience some of the greatest dangers. Almost half of the state's non-government jobs have to do with commercial fishing. That's more than 78,000 people. Sadly, about 1/3 of all on-the-job deaths in Alaska are fishing-related. Can you guess what the most dangerous kind of fishing in Alaska is? Pulling in a huge shark with a line? Nope. It's fishing for Alaskan king crab. Fishermen use huge, heavy traps called pots. They bait the pots, drop them into the ocean, and haul them in when they're full of crabs. King crab fishermen find their catch in areas of the Gulf of Alaska and the Bering Sea. The season for catching king crabs is between October and January, and is often less than 4 weeks long. This may be the best time for catching crabs, but it's the worst time to be out on Alaskan waters. These fishermen experience the coldest waters and weather conditions in the United States. Winter winds and ocean spray cause ice to build up all over the boat. Even dressed as warmly as possible, fishermen slide around on icy decks while moving pots that weigh hundreds of pounds. Alaska is so far north that a winter day may have only a few hours of sunlight. This doesn't stop fishermen, though. Because the king crab season is short, fishermen work as long as 18 hours a day. Accidents can easily happen to tired crews working in the dark. More than 80% of the deaths of Alaskan fishermen are due to drowning. Crew can slip on an ice-covered deck, get shoved by a big wave, or get knocked into the water by heavy equipment. Even if they're rescued from pitch-black waters, fishermen risk hypothermia. The boat. What does an Alaskan crab fishing boat look like? It needs to be big enough to carry everything a small crew needs for weeks out at sea. The boat is a place to work, but also a mini home. It has beds, called bunks, and a kitchen, or scullery, with a stove, refrigerator, and other appliances. Boats have many medical supplies, since the crew can't get to a hospital quickly. Also, because of the high rate of drowning accidents, all fishing boats are required by law to have life rafts, survival suits, fire extinguishers, and equipment that can signal others if needed. A commercial fishing boat carries plenty of fishing equipment, including bait-cutting machines, radar, sonar, and GPS, global positioning systems. A crab fishing boat may have as many as 300 steel crab pots on board. On average, a crab pot measures 7 feet by 7 feet by 3 feet, 2.1 meters by 2.1 meters by 0.9 meters. Each pot weighs about 700 pounds, 318 kilograms. Boats have a crane and a winch to lower and raise them. A buoy marks each pot in the water so the crew knows where to retrieve it. The miles of rope needed to connect buoys and pots are also on board. Throwing pots. The ship's crane puts each pot onto a flat metal plate or lift attached to the side of the boat. First, a crew member, called a deckhand, baits the pot. Then the lift tilts up and the pot slides into the water. Crab pots are thrown out in a line over many miles. They sit or soak for at least 24 hours. When the boat comes back to retrieve a pot, the deckhand throws a hook to catch a rope attached to the buoy. The winch winds the rope and pulls the pot on board. The deckhands place it on the lift, open the pot, and inspect their haul. The crew. While some fishing boats can have over 100 people on board, an Alaskan king crab boat may have fewer than 10 fishermen. Some crew members have certain jobs, while others do a bit of everything. The captain plans and oversees the whole operation, including where to fish, for how long, and how much to sell the haul for.
The captain may provide the money needed to make the trip. Captains take a risk they won't make their money back. Captains need to know how to steer the boat through bad weather and icy waters. Finally, they must be willing to put the crew's lives ahead of their own. Each ship needs an engineer to keep the boat's powerful engines and other equipment running well. This means working in an incredibly noisy engine room. Engineers wear special headphones to protect their hearing. Ship engineers may maintain and operate the crane used to move pots around the deck. They take care of the onboard tanks that hold the live crabs after they're caught. They check for leaks in the boat and are ready to make repairs at any moment. Engineers must be able to think fast on little sleep. Besides all this, engineers help out with other tasks such as measuring crabs. Deckhands do pretty much everything else on the boat. They must know how to tie knots, throw a hook, steer a ship, cook, and more. They load and unload equipment and supplies. Deckhands in Alaska need to do all these things in the dark and in freezing winds, too. Even with a winch and crane, about 3 deckhands are needed to steady the heavy crab pots as they're lowered and raised. Each pot is worth about $1,000, so they have to be careful. In their spare time, they may use baseball bats to chip ice off the deck. Safety measures. Alaskan king crab boat captains have just days to bring in their quota. However, they and all captains need to follow certain safety measures to protect their crews. They should avoid fishing in bad conditions and make sure their boats are ready to withstand tough conditions. Between 2000 and 2010, 148 commercial fishing boats had disasters after experiencing floods, bad weather, and large waves. NIOSH recommends that crews practice drills in case of disasters. They should also wear personal flotation devices anytime they're on deck. To avoid equipment accidents, alarms and automatic stopping devices can be put on winches in case deckhands get tangled in crab pot ropes. The Coast Guard steps in. The U.S. Coast Guard can inspect a commercial boat at any time to make sure it has its safety equipment. They can also keep a crew from fishing if they look unprepared or unskilled. These and other safety measures have decreased the number of deaths in Alaska during the last 20 years. Sadly, states that don't have the same safety measures are still losing fishermen to accidents. Dungeness crab fishing crews in Oregon, Washington, and Northern California now report more deaths than Alaskan crab fishermen. The boats there don't have quotas. Accidents happen because of overweight boats and untrained crews. Just a few safety measures can save lives.
A Look at Uranus by Suzanne Slade. A far-off planet, far off in the dark sky, is a beautiful planet named Uranus. You cannot see it with your eyes because it is 1.75 billion miles, 2.8 billion kilometers from Earth. To view this greenish-blue planet, you need to look through a tool with powerful lenses called a telescope. If you hopped aboard a spacecraft heading for Uranus, you could not land on the planet. This is because Uranus is made of gas. Just as the gases in Earth's air cannot hold things, the gases that make up Uranus could not hold a spacecraft. The 7th planet. Uranus is the 3rd largest planet in our solar system. This big planet is made mostly of hydrogen and helium gas. Uranus is known as one of the 4 gas giant planets, along with Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune. Uranus is the 7th planet from the Sun. All the planets in our solar system move around the Sun in paths called orbits. The amount of time a planet takes to circle the Sun equals 1 year on that planet. Therefore, it takes Uranus 1 Uranian year to orbit the Sun once. 1 Uranian year lasts as long as 84 years on Earth, a special spin. As planets orbit the Sun, they also spin. A planet spins around a pretend line through its middle, called an axis. Most planets have an axis that runs from the top to the bottom of the planet. When its axis is in this position, a planet spins sideways, like a top. However, Uranus's axis goes through its sides. Therefore, the planet spins in a different direction from other planets. Uranus looks like a rolling ball as it spins. Uranus spins around once every 17 hours and 14 minutes. This time is the length of one day on Uranus. Big Blue. Uranus is covered by a coat of gases called an atmosphere. These gases include hydrogen, helium, and a small amount of methane. The methane blocks certain kinds of light and makes Uranus appear greenish blue. Sunlight is made of many different colored rays of light. When sunlight hits Uranus, methane takes in the red rays but lets the blue rays through. This results in a bluish planet. The center part of Uranus is called the core. Most scientists think this core is hard and rocky. They believe that melted matter that could be as hot as 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 4,982 degrees Celsius, circles the core, a powerful pull. Some planets have a powerful force called a magnetic field. This force can be useful to people. A tool called a compass uses Earth's magnetic field to help people figure out where to go when they get lost. Earth's magnetic field also causes bands of light called auroras in the sky near the North Pole and the South Pole. Uranus has a magnetic field that causes auroras too. Earth's magnetic field comes from its core. Scientists believe Uranus's magnetic field is made near the outside of the planet. The pull of Uranus's magnetic field is 48 times stronger than Earth's. Discovering Uranus. Until the late 1700s, people believed that Earth was one of just 6 planets. Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, Saturn, and Venus were so large and bright that people could spot them easily in the sky. They did not know about Uranus because it was too far away to see. Then, in 1781, scientist William Herschel found a tiny new disk in the sky. Herschel discovered this disk with a new telescope he had made. This telescope had more powerful lenses than earlier telescopes did. Scientists soon decided this disk was a planet. In time, the planet came to be known as Uranus. Moons around Uranus. Uranus has at least 27 moons circling it. Scientists hope to find even more moons someday. Uranus's moons are fairly small. Earth's moon is much bigger than any of Uranus's moons. Uranus's largest moon, Titania, is 980 miles, 1,577 kilometers wide. William Herschel discovered Titania in 1787. Later that year, he spotted Uranus's second largest moon, Oberon. Oberon is full of deep holes called craters. Uranus's next 3 largest moons are Ariel, Umbriel, and Miranda. Of all Uranus's moons, Ariel shines brightest. The darkest moon is Umbriel. Miranda is a very bumpy moon with lots of craters and valleys. Uranus's rings. In 1977, scientists from Australia discovered several rings circling Uranus. Scientists found more rings in 1986, bringing the total number of rings to 11. Uranus's smallest ring is about 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers wide. The largest may be up to 60 miles, 97 kilometers wide. Scientists are not certain what these rings are made of. Most scientists believe they are made of dust and large pieces of ice. The ring farthest from Uranus is called Epsilon. It is likely made mostly of ice pieces that are several feet wide. Epsilon is the brightest of Uranus's rings. What's next? Voyager 2 is the only spacecraft that has made the long trip to Uranus. After 9 years of flying, the spacecraft came within 50,600 miles, 81,433 kilometers of Uranus in 1986. It took pictures that let scientists discover 10 new moons circling Uranus. It also gathered facts about Uranus's magnetic field and atmosphere. Uranus is so cold that scientists believe nothing can live there, so they are not planning another costly trip to this far-off planet soon. Instead, scientists use the Hubble Space Telescope to study Uranus. They hope to find new moons or rings orbiting Uranus without ever leaving Earth. Cool facts. Uranus is home to huge storms and powerful lightning. Uranus is a very cold planet. It is about minus 350 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 212 degrees Celsius there. Uranus's moons are named after characters in plays or poems written by William Shakespeare and Alexander Pope. The moon Ariel has big holes called craters. It also has many valleys called rift valleys. Flying Lemurs by Willow Clark. What's in a name? The flying lemur, or colugo, is an animal that almost never leaves the trees in which it lives. These small, shy mammals are most commonly seen flying through the air as they move between trees. Even though they are called flying lemurs, colugos cannot fly. Instead, they glide like kites, using the skin that connects their front and back legs to keep them in the air. Colugos are not really lemurs either. They are called lemurs because their faces look like lemurs' faces. True lemurs live in Madagascar, an island in the Indian Ocean. Flying lemurs live in Southeast Asia, at home in the trees. There are two species of flying lemurs. Both species live in Southeast Asia. The Philippine flying lemur lives in the Philippines. The Sunda flying lemur lives in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Borneo, Singapore, and Myanmar. Both kinds of flying lemurs are arboreal, meaning they live in trees. Just about everything they need is found in the treetops of the tropical rainforest habitats in which they live. Flying lemurs are nocturnal. This means they are active mostly at night. The two colugos. Well-known animals that are most closely related to flying lemurs include tree shrews and primates. Primates are animals such as lemurs and monkeys. Colugos are not tree shrews or primates, though. They belong to an order called Dermoptera. The two species of colugos are alike in many ways. Both animals are about the size of a heavy squirrel. Both species have pale fur on their undersides, with a mix of darker gray and brown fur on their backs. This coloring provides camouflage that helps the animal blend in with the bark on tree trunks. Time to glide. When flying lemurs want to move from one tree to another, they spread their arms and legs and glide. A piece of furry skin called the patagium stretches along each side of a flying lemur's body. It connects the animal's necks, front legs, back legs, and tails. This skin catches the air in much the same way that the wings on a paper airplane do. Flying lemurs can glide up to 230 feet, 70 meters, before landing on a new branch. Colugos move slowly on the ground. This makes them easy for predators to catch. Because of this, colugos do not come down to the ground often. Up in the trees. Most flying lemurs are solitary. This means that they live alone. Some may live in small, loosely connected groups, though. Each colugo can be territorial about the places it sleeps and likes to find food. How does a colugo move between the trees in its range? First, it uses its sharp claws to hold onto and climb a tree trunk. It climbs slowly using small hops. When it wants to move to another tree, it climbs to a nice high spot. Then it jumps out from a branch and spreads its arms and legs and glides to the next tree. It does this over and over to move across a forest, looking for food. Colugos are herbivores, or animals that eat only plants. They eat shoots, flowers, sap, and fruits from the different trees in their habitat. They eat mostly the leafy parts of trees, though. When they get hungry, colugos glide to a well-liked feeding place within their range. When they find a leafy branch, they use their front feet to pull it close. Then they use their lower teeth to scrape the leaves. Their lower front teeth are well suited to this job. They have a comb-like shape, and each tooth has up to 20 tines. After they scrape the leaves, colugos then use their large tongues to lick up the plant material. Flying lemur predators. While colugos are eating plants, they must be on the lookout for predators, such as the Philippine eagle. Colugos are slow-moving, both in the trees and on the ground. They have a few ways they stay safe, though. One way colugos avoid predators is to stay high in the treetops, away from most other animals. Another way that colugos avoid predators is by sitting very still. Their fur camouflages them, letting them blend in with tree bark. Finally, if a predator gets too close, colugos can jump from that tree and glide to escape. Baby colugos. Male and female flying lemurs come together to have babies throughout the year. Colugo young grow inside the mothers for about 60 days. There is usually only one baby born at a time, although sometimes a female will give birth to twins. A newborn colugo is very small and completely helpless when it is born. The mother must carry her young at all times, even while gliding. To hold her young, the mother folds the bottom part of her patagium into a warm little pocket to hold her young against her stomach. The mother nurses her young for about 6 months. Colugos reach their adult size at between 2 and 3 years of age. Flying lemurs and habitat loss. Flying lemurs are not endangered, but their numbers have been going down as people cut down forests. This leads to habitat loss for flying lemurs. Habitat loss means that colugos and other animals need to compete with each other for food and places to live. The good news is that some forests in Southeast Asia are not allowed to be cut down. This keeps these places safe as habitats for animals like the colugo. Nearly everything we know about colugos comes from studying them in their natural habitat. Scientists have had trouble keeping colugos alive in captivity. This means that there is still much to be learned about these fascinating little animals. Why are the North and South Poles so cold? By Patricia J. Murphy. What are the North and South Poles? The North and South Poles are the coldest, the windiest, and the driest places on Earth. What are they? Imagine that a rod runs through Earth's center and pokes out of Earth's top and bottom. Earth spins around on the rod. This imaginary rod that Earth spins on is called Earth's axis. The North Pole and the South Pole are what we call the top and the bottom of Earth's axis, places where the rod would poke out if it were real. The North Pole is located in the Arctic Ocean. The South Pole is located on the continent called Antarctica. How were the North and South Poles formed? Long ago, Earth's 7 continents were one landmass. Sunlight and warm ocean water currents kept the land warm. The movement of plates in Earth's crust made the land split into the continents. The movement of the continents stopped the warm currents from reaching the North and South Poles. The poles became much colder places. In the Ice Age, all of Earth became covered in ice. As the ice melted, the poles stayed cold because of their positions on Earth. They are the farthest places from the sun's heat. Why are the North and South Poles so cold? Earth's curve makes parts of it warm and parts of it cold. The part of Earth midway between the poles is warmest. The equator runs through it. The area around the equator gets the strongest heat because the sun's rays hit it directly. As Earth curves away from the sun, it is harder for the sun's rays to reach Earth. The sun's heat weakens as Earth curves away, making Earth colder the farther north or south you go. The ice and snow at the poles also keeps them cold by reflecting the sun's rays away from the poles. What seasons are there at the North and South Poles? The tilt of Earth's axis causes the changes in seasons. As Earth circles the sun, half of Earth tilts toward the sun and half tilts away. When one pole is tilting toward the sun, the other pole is tilting away from the sun. The pole tilting toward the sun has spring, then summer. The pole tilting away from the sun has fall, then winter. When a pole tilts toward the sun, it has months of 24-hour sunlight. The sun never goes down. When the pole tilts away from the sun, it has many months of total darkness. Who lives at the North and South Poles? If you live at the North Pole or the South Pole, you must learn how to live in the cold. Inuit or Eskimo people were the first to live in the Arctic. They lived in igloos and in homes built into the snow. Today, people living at the poles live in homes built on posts above the frozen ground. Antarctica is the coldest place on Earth. Most of its land is not fit for living things. Only scientists, explorers, and their teams live there. People can come to or can leave Antarctica only at certain times. When it's too cold, planes cannot fly there. Which plants and animals live at Earth's poles? Few plants and animals can live in polar areas. Plants in the Arctic grow low to the ground. Their roots grow sideways over the frozen ground, called the Arctic tundra. Arctic animals live on the ice and in the water. These animals include whales, seals, polar bears, wolves, and birds. No plants can grow in Antarctica. Animals live mostly on its coasts and in its waters. Antarctic animals include penguins and seals. Only microscopic creatures live in the middle of Antarctica. Who discovered the North and South Poles? Many people have claimed to be the first to discover the North Pole. Native people lived in the Arctic long before Arctic explorers made their claims. American Robert Peary may have been the first person to mark the exact spot of the North Pole in 1909. In 1772, Englishman James Cook began a 3-year search for Antarctica. He never found it. In 1911, Norwegian Roald Amundsen and Englishman Robert Falcon Scott raced to the South Pole. Amundsen got there first. Scott arrived 1 month later. What did people once think of the poles? Early people knew very little about the North and South Poles. Some people told stories to explain what they thought the poles were like. Their maps showed the North Pole as a large black rock sticking out of the ocean. Most people knew even less about the South Pole. Early Greeks thought it was a large landmass at the edge of the earth that balanced the countries. Some called it Terra Australis Incognita. This means the unknown Southland. What can we learn from the North and South Poles? Scientists from around the world study at Earth's poles. What they learn can help everyone. Some scientists study the land and the water. Others study the atmosphere and the weather. They chart the changes in Earth's poles. There are scientists who study polar wildlife. Other scientists study the hole in Earth's ozone layer above Antarctica. People who come to polar areas try not to hurt the natural resources. Scientists who go to the poles sign papers to promise to take care of these amazing frozen places. How do people prepare for a polar expedition? A trip to the North Pole or the South Pole can be exciting. It can also be unsafe. The pole's cold weather can cause frostbite, hypothermia, and death. Explorers must wear many layers of clothes to keep their bodies warm. They need goggles to protect their eyes from the sun's glare off the snow and ice. They need tools such as picks and rope to help them get around. Many people bring journals and pencils to take notes on what they find. They also carry radios to call for help in case of emergency.
Migrating with the Salmon by Thessaly Cat. To the ocean and back. Have you ever heard about groups of animals that make long journeys? These journeys are generally called migrations. Some animals migrate every year. Other animals, such as the salmon, migrate just a few times in their lives. Salmon are a kind of fish. They live in North America, Europe, and Asia. Most salmon migrate just 2 times in their lives. First, they travel from the freshwater streams where they were born to the ocean. Then, as adults, they migrate back to their natal streams to have babies. Some salmon travel hundreds or thousands of miles, kilometers, on these journeys. Atlantic and Pacific salmon. Migratory wild salmon are generally born in freshwater streams that are high in the hills or mountains. These streams feed into rivers that flow into either the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean. These oceans are where salmon live as adults. Atlantic salmon come from the streams and rivers of eastern Canada, the northeastern United States, and northern Europe. Pacific salmon come from Japan, Russia, the northwestern United States, and western Canada. There is just one species of Atlantic salmon. However, there are several species of Pacific salmon. These include Chinook salmon, chum salmon, sockeye salmon, coho salmon, pink salmon, and cherry salmon. Changing colors. Salmon are most often silver-colored when they live in the ocean. However, when adult salmon migrate from the ocean to their natal freshwater streams, they change colors. For example, sockeye salmon turn bright red when they return to fresh water. Salmon can also develop hooked jaws on their return migration. Atlantic salmon generally weigh about 10 pounds, 4.5 kilograms as adults. The largest Pacific salmon is the Chinook. It most often weighs about 20 pounds, 10 kilograms, but can be as heavy as 80 pounds, 35 kilograms. The smallest is the pink salmon. It weighs between 3 and 6 pounds, 1 to 3 kilograms. The return migration. While some salmon live in the ocean for just 6 months, other species stay for as long as 7 years. Then they begin to migrate back to their natal streams. Salmon must swim upstream and jump through rapids and waterfalls. Some salmon, such as the chum and Chinook salmon, travel about 2,000 miles, 3,200 kilometers. Many salmon die along this journey. Salmon return to their natal streams to spawn or have babies. Most Pacific salmon die soon after spawning. However, some Atlantic salmon return to the ocean and migrate back to their natal stream to spawn again. Scientists are not sure how salmon find their way. Some think salmon use Earth's magnetic field. Others think they use their sense of smell. From North America to the ocean. This map shows the migration of young North American salmon to the ocean. There are also salmon that live in the Great Lakes. However, these salmon do not migrate. From eggs to smolts. Salmon hatch from eggs. When a baby salmon hatches, it is called an alevin. Alevins get the nutrients they need from their yolk sacs. Once an alevin has absorbed its yolk sac, it is called a fry. After it grows some more, it is known as a par. Some species of salmon, such as pink and chum salmon, stay in fresh water as pars for just a few days or weeks. Other species, such as the Chinook, sockeye, and Atlantic salmon, may stay in fresh water for a few years. As they start migrating toward the ocean, the fry's bodies change so that they can live in salt water. At this point, they are called smolts. What do salmon eat? Salmon do not eat the same foods throughout their lives. When they are fry, salmon most often eat tiny invertebrates and the bodies of dead adult salmon. Most adult Atlantic and Pacific salmon eat insects and small fish. However, sockeye salmon are filter feeders. This means that they filter tiny living things called plankton from the water. The salmon use special body parts called gill rakers to do this. Adult salmon do not eat anything once they leave the ocean to return to their natal streams. This is one of the reasons most salmon die after they spawn. Salmon predators. Salmon have many animal predators. Fish, ducks, and raccoons eat salmon eggs in freshwater streams. Other fish and large insects eat salmon as alevins. As fry and smolts, salmon are hunted by large fish, minks, otters, and fish-eating birds. Larger ocean fish, seals, sea lions, orcas, and sharks hunt salmon in the oceans. Once salmon begin their return migration up freshwater rivers and streams, otters, eagles, and bears all hunt salmon in shallow water. Bears can catch salmon as they jump into the air over rapids and waterfalls. Fishing and farming. People in many countries enjoy eating salmon. However, some wild populations of salmon are getting too small because of fishing. Certain species and populations of wild salmon are even endangered because of overfishing. Many salmon are not born in the wild, however. Today, most of the salmon eaten by people in the United States and Europe is hatched and raised on salmon farms. However, salmon farms can also be bad for the environment. This is because salmon farms make waste that pollutes the ocean. They also spread deadly parasites and sicknesses to wild fish, such as wild salmon. Salmon today and tomorrow. Today, wild salmon face many problems. For example, migrating salmon returning to the Snake River in the northwestern United States must cross 8 dams to reach their natal streams. It is very hard for the salmon to swim or jump over the dams. Scientists are at work studying salmon migration. Both scientists and wildlife groups are working to make sure migrating wild salmon can reach their natal streams each year. Hopefully, salmon will be making the journey from freshwater to the ocean and back for years to come.
Loud Sound Energy by Emma Carlson Byrne. Quiet or loud? Sound energy. Whisper in your friend's ear. Now, scream at the top of your lungs at a rock concert. Did you know that when you do both of these things, you are letting out sound energy? You make waves of sound when you make any noise at all. In fact, every sound in the world is the result of sound energy. Energy is the ability of a system to do work, and it comes in many different forms. Light and heat are types of energy. This book will discuss sound energy. It will explain what makes sound, how we hear sound, and how sound is measured. The world of sounds. Close your eyes for a moment after you read this and think about all the sounds you are hearing right now. Can you hear birds outside? How about the creaking of the chair you are sitting on? If you are very quiet, you may even hear your own breathing. These sounds have different sources. The birds, for instance, are making their own sounds. You are breathing and making the chair creak, though. The world around us is filled with millions of sounds. A pounding jackhammer, a rock band, and the screeching of monkeys in the rainforest are all sources of sound. What are sound waves? Sounds travel in waves. All sound waves begin with some kind of vibration that then travels from the sound source to your ear. For instance, if you were to tap a glass with a knife, the glass would vibrate. That vibration would cause the air molecules nearby to move back and forth in a wave-like pattern. If you could see sound waves, they would look as if they had peaks and valleys like waves in the ocean. Loud sounds, like a clap of thunder, have high peaks and deep valleys. Quiet sounds, like the rustle of a leaf, have low peaks and shallow valleys. The speed of sound. Sound travels faster through denser mediums. That means sound travels faster through water than it does through air. When you ride in an airplane, you are traveling about 600 miles per hour, 966 kilometers per hour. That is almost as fast as the speed of sound in air, which is about 343 meters per second, or 767 miles per hour, 1,235 kilometers per hour. Sound must have liquid, solid, or gas matter to travel through. It passes faster through denser mediums. This means that sound travels faster through liquids and solids than gases. In a vacuum, like outer space, there are no sounds. Sound can also bounce off of objects. An echo is a sound bouncing off of an object. Loud or soft, high or low. You may have heard of singers being on pitch. Pitch refers to whether the sound is low or high. Sounds with low pitch have a low frequency. Frequency refers to how fast the particles in a sound wave are vibrating. With a low sound, the particles are vibrating more slowly, and the waves in the sound wave are farther apart. Higher pitched sounds have a higher frequency. The waves in the sound wave are closer together. Volume refers to how loud or soft a sound is. Loud noises have sound waves with high peaks and deep valleys. Softer noises have low peaks and shallow valleys. Amazing ears. Our ears are the organs that allow us to hear sound. The part you can see is the outer ear. Its folds direct sound waves into the ear opening. The sound waves then strike the eardrum, which causes it to vibrate. 3 little bones connected to the eardrum send the vibration into the cochlea, or inner ear. The inner ear has fluid in it, which is set in motion. Tiny hairs connected to the auditory nerves then pick up the motion of the fluid. The nerves send signals to the brain. Then the brain puts a meaning to the sound. Special sounds. Some sounds are too high-pitched for humans to hear. Animals like dogs, cats, bats, and dolphins can all hear very high sounds that we cannot hear. Some animals use sounds to hunt and explore. This is called echolocation. Bats and dolphins, for instance, make special noises. When these noises bounce off of objects, the echo tells the animal how close objects are. A sonar device is a machine that makes tiny clicks to measure how far away objects are. The clicks bounce off of objects and are reflected back. The device reads how long the clicks took to come back. How is sound measured? Sound is measured in a unit called a decibel. The threshold, or lowest limit of hearing, is 0 decibels. From there, the decibel scale starts going up. Human breathing is about 10 decibels. A vacuum cleaner is 60 decibels. A rocket launch is 140 decibels. After 150 decibels, you can cause damage to your ears and lose your hearing. There are many instruments for measuring sound. One of the most common is a sound meter. The sound meter has a microphone that picks up sound. The meter also has a scale that will show you how many decibels something is. Changing sound energy. Energy does not always have to exist in one form. Sound energy, for instance, can be changed into other kinds of energy. Scientists have recently created a kind of battery that can be charged just by absorbing noise. The battery changes sound energy into electrical energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, though. All energy is just converted from some other energy source. When energy is released from a source, it is then used somewhere else. Sound and technology. The buzz of a bumblebee, the thud of a jackhammer, and the soaring voice of a singer are just some of the millions of sounds that fill our world. Humans have learned to record and control many sounds in our world. For example, every time we talk on the phone or turn on the stereo, we are using technology to listen to sounds that we have harnessed for our own purposes.
Pandas by Willow Clark. Hello, Panda. When you hear the word panda, you might think first of the black and white giant panda. This member of the bear family has come to stand for the movement to help endangered animals. You may also have heard of the red panda. Although it has a similar name to the giant panda, the red panda is more closely related to raccoons than it is to bears. Both the giant panda and the red panda live in bamboo forests in the mountains of Asia. This book will tell you more about these Asian animals. In the mountains of Asia, giant pandas live in mountainous areas in central China, in the Sichuan, Gansu, and Shanxi provinces. This habitat is cool and wet and has forests where lots of bamboo grows. Giant pandas once lived in the lowlands of these areas. Farming and forest clearing have pushed the giant panda farther up into the mountains, though. Red pandas are found throughout the cool mountainous forests in the countries of Nepal, India, Bhutan, and Myanmar. They also live in the mountainous forests of China's Sichuan and Yunnan provinces, where their range overlaps with that of the giant panda. The two pandas. Scientists have studied the giant panda and the red panda to figure out if the two species are related. They also want to know to which other animals they are related. Sorting animals in this way is called classification. Studies of the giant panda's genetic code have led scientists to group this animal with the bear family. Red pandas were once thought to be part of the raccoon family because their bodies looked similar to raccoons. They were also once classified with the bear family. Scientists have since decided that red pandas do not have any close living relatives. Today, they are a family all by themselves. Yummy bamboo. Both the giant panda and the red panda have diets that are made up mostly of bamboo. While the giant panda eats all parts of the plant, the red panda eats mostly bamboo shoots and leaves. Bamboo is plentiful and grows year-round, but it does not have many nutrients. Pandas must eat lots of bamboo. In fact, giant pandas eat about 28 pounds, 13 kilograms of bamboo every day. Finding and eating bamboo takes up 10 to 16 hours of the red pandas and the giant pandas' day. They spend the rest of their time resting or sleeping at home in the forest. Red pandas and giant pandas have adaptations that help them live in a forest habitat. Both pandas have false thumbs. These are large wrist bones that are covered by pads of skin. They use these bones to hold on to bamboo. Both kinds of pandas are skillful tree climbers, with sharp claws to grip tree branches. Giant pandas have thick, woolly fur that keeps them warm in wet, chilly weather. Red pandas have long tails. Their long tails help them balance as they move along branches. They also use these bushy tails like blankets when the weather is cold. The red panda. The red panda's body is about the size of a cat's, with a tail that's about the same length as its body. Its fur blends in with the colors of its forest surroundings. Coloring that helps an animal blend with its surroundings is called camouflage. Red pandas are most active between dusk and dawn. During the night, they look for food throughout their territories. The territories of individual red pandas often overlap, but they are solitary animals. This means that they live alone unless they are mating or raising babies. Red pandas communicate by marking territory. through body language, and by making sounds. The giant panda. The giant panda is between 4 and 6 feet, 1 to 2 meters long, which is about the size of an American black bear. Scientists are not sure why the giant panda has its black and white coloring. They think that it may help camouflage giant pandas or help them attract mates. Like red pandas, giant pandas are solitary animals. They tend to stay away from one another unless it is mating season. They communicate mostly through marking territory and by making sounds. Unlike other bears, giant pandas do not make loud growling noises. Instead, they make noises like barks, huffs, and bleats. Panda predators. Adult giant pandas have few predators. They are sometimes hunted by snow leopards, though. Yellow-throated martens sometimes eat giant panda cubs. Giant pandas do their best to try to stay away from predators. If they cannot escape, then they will fight back. Snow leopards and martens also hunt red pandas. When red pandas feel threatened, they try to escape by climbing into the trees. They may also release strong scents from glands near their tails. If getting away is not possible, they will stand on their back legs and use their sharp front claws to strike out at predators. Baby pandas. Both giant pandas and red pandas mate only once every couple of years. Red pandas mate in the winter and have litters of 1 to 4 cubs in the late spring. Giant pandas mate in the spring and have 1 or 2 cubs in the summer. Giant panda and red panda cubs are blind and helpless when they are born. Their mothers nurse them until they can start eating bamboo. At about 18 months, both giant panda and red panda mothers force their young to leave. While red pandas are adults at this age, giant pandas are not full-grown adults until between the ages of 4 and 8. Pandas in trouble. Both giant pandas and red pandas are in trouble. Giant pandas are endangered. There are only about 1,000 to 1,600 living in the wild, and about 100 more live in zoos. Red pandas are vulnerable, meaning they are at risk for becoming endangered. The biggest threat to pandas is habitat loss. Poachers are another threat pandas face. Conservation groups are encouraging countries where pandas live to make and enforce laws that protect the animals and their habitats. Such protections will help these Asian animals continue to survive in the wild.
Asian Dolphins and Other Marine Mammals by Willow Clark. The waters of Asia. The oceans and rivers throughout Asia are filled with wildlife. Some of its most fascinating animals are marine mammals, such as dolphins. Some of these animals live in freshwater. Others live in saltwater. There are even animals that live in somewhat salty or brackish waters. Brackish water is often found in places where fresh water and salt water mix. Many of these marine mammals, such as the Irrawaddy dolphin, are in trouble. Their numbers are falling due to pollution and the damming of rivers. They also get caught in nets meant for other animals. This book will introduce you to some of these amazing Asian animals. What are marine mammals? Marine mammals such as dolphins, dugongs, and seals live in the ocean biome. They are very different from fish, though. Unlike fish, mammals are warm-blooded. This means that they make their own body heat. Mammals also nurse their young with milk from their bodies. Most marine mammals have fur or hair on their bodies, as land mammals do. Lake Baikal and Caspian Sea seals have fur that is easy to see. Dugongs have fine hair on their skin. Dolphins are nearly hairless. Some young dolphins have hair around their snouts when they are born, which they later lose. Where in the world? Asia's marine mammals are found in its rivers and estuaries, as well as in its oceans and seas. The South Asian river dolphin is a freshwater dolphin. It lives in the Ganges and Indus rivers in India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. These dolphins are endangered due to hunting, pollution, damming of rivers in their habitat, and getting caught in fishing nets. Dugongs live in the warm coastal waters of the Red Sea, Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. Laws in many parts of their range protect these vulnerable ocean mammals. Lake Baikal and the Caspian Sea are bodies of water within the Asian continent. Seals live in both of these bodies of water. Freshwater or saltwater. Dolphins, whales, and porpoises all belong to the same scientific order or grouping called Cetacea. The animals in this order are called cetaceans. Most of them live in the ocean. There are 3 living species of freshwater dolphins, though. Freshwater dolphins have a few adaptations that set them apart from marine dolphins. Freshwater dolphins generally have snouts that are about 4 times longer than those of marine dolphins. These snouts help them find fish along riverbanks. Freshwater dolphins also have smaller eyes and poorer eyesight than marine dolphins. River water is often muddy, so good eyesight would not help these dolphins much. They count on echolocation to find food instead. Irrawaddy dolphin. The Irrawaddy dolphin is not a true river dolphin. Irrawaddy dolphins are adapted to live in different tropical aquatic environments. They are named for the Irrawaddy River in Myanmar, one of the freshwater rivers in which they live. They are also found in the brackish estuaries and coastal waters of the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. Irrawaddy dolphins swim in pods or groups of 3 to 10 dolphins. These dolphins are listed as vulnerable to becoming extinct. The main threats they face are getting caught in fishing nets, getting hit by boats, habitat loss, and pollution. Indo-Pacific humpback dolphin. The Indo-Pacific humpback dolphin lives in the shallow coastal waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. These dolphins range from the east coast of Africa to Southeast Asia and Australia. This dolphin's color varies based on its age and in which part of its range it lives. Calves or babies are dark gray. They become lighter gray and pinkish spots appear as they grow into young adult dolphins. In the waters around China and Southeast Asia, adults are white or pinkish white. For this reason, these dolphins are sometimes called Chinese white dolphins. Dugong. The dugong is a large marine mammal that eats underwater grasses. Its large size and diet have helped earn it the nickname sea cow. It lives in warm, shallow coastal waters from East Africa to Australia. Dugongs can stay underwater for up to 6 minutes at a time. They hold themselves upright with their tails and push their heads above water to breathe. Dugongs have long been hunted for their meat, skin, bones, and teeth. They are also threatened by pollution, getting hit by boats, and getting caught in fishing nets. There are places where they are protected, especially off the coast of Australia. The spread of such protections throughout the rest of its range may help the numbers of this Asian animal recover. Lake Baikal seal. Lake Baikal seals are the only seal that lives only in freshwater. They are named for the lake in Siberia, in Russia, where they are found. These thickly furred seals live on the ice that covers the lake for several months of the year. They claw holes in the ice so they can dive for fish. In the summer, Lake Baikal seals molt or shed their winter coats. Then they move to the rocks along the shore until the ice forms again. Baikal seals come together mainly to breed. Otherwise, they live alone and spend much of their time hunting a fish called golomayanka. Finless porpoise. The finless porpoise lives in coastal waters from the Persian Gulf in the west to Japan in the east. It also lives in freshwater in rivers such as the Yangtze River in China. The finless porpoise gets its name from its lack of a dorsal fin. This is the fin that other porpoises have on their backs. Like many dolphins and porpoises, the finless porpoise's main predators are sharks. The finless porpoise is listed as vulnerable due to several threats from humans, including getting tangled in fishing nets and getting hit by boats. Marine mammals in danger. Many of Asia's marine and freshwater mammals are vulnerable or endangered. China's Yangtze River dolphin is listed as critically endangered, but is thought to be extinct. That means this freshwater dolphin is likely gone forever. People are working to protect Asia's marine mammals. People around the world join groups that ask for laws to protect Earth's oceans and to limit the threats these animals face from human activities. Scientists study marine mammals to learn more about these animals. These efforts could help keep Asia's marine mammals safe.
Investigating Why It Rains by Ellen Rennie. Rain, rain, go away. Have you ever wished it would stop raining? Maybe you had to play inside during recess. Maybe your soccer game or trip to the beach got called off. Rain washes out more than fun and games. Too much rain floods roads and houses. Too little rain dries up crops and soil, though. We cannot control the weather. It helps to prepare for it, though. All our weather happens in the atmosphere, the blanket of air covering Earth. Meteorologists study the atmosphere to predict where, when, and how much it will rain. What clues do these weather scientists look for? Water, water everywhere. First, it is important to understand where the water that falls as rain comes from. Oceans cover large parts of Earth. They hold most of its water. Lakes, rivers, and streams store water too. Soil does as well. Water is locked in glaciers, ice caps, and snow fields. It is held in the atmosphere as a gas, called water vapor. Earth's water is used over and over again. It moves from oceans to air, to land, and back to oceans. As it does this, it changes forms, from water to water vapor to ice and back again. Rain plays an important part in this cycle. What is the water cycle? All the water on Earth is part of a never-ending water cycle. Understanding how the water cycle works will bring us another step closer to understanding why it rains. The sun powers this cycle. It heats the water on Earth. This causes some of the water to evaporate or change into gas. The gas, called water vapor, then rises into the atmosphere. As it rises, it cools and condenses. This means it changes from a gas back into water. It forms clouds. Rain and other types of precipitation fall from the clouds. This returns water to Earth. More about evaporation. A key part of the water cycle is evaporation. You cannot see evaporation. You may have felt it, though. Have you ever been cold when you came out of a swimming pool? As water evaporated from your skin into the air, it cooled you. The same thing happens when you sweat. Your sweat is part of the water cycle. Evaporation adds water vapor to the atmosphere. Most water in the atmosphere has evaporated from Earth's oceans. Rainfall puts back some of the water that was lost, but not all of it. The oceans do not dry up, though. Can you guess why? The ocean gets water from rivers and underground places, too. More about condensation. Changing water vapor back into water is called condensation. Condensation forms clouds. How does that work? Have you ever held a glass filled with lemonade and ice? Did drops form on the outside? Where did they come from? They came from the air. Warm air holds more water vapor than cold air. When air cools, it cannot hold all its moisture. Water comes out. When water vapor in the warmer air hits your icy glass, it changes back to water as it cools. Clouds form when warm air cools and cannot hold all its moisture. What happens inside a cloud? How does the water vapor in clouds end up as rain? Water vapor condenses on dust, salt, or smoke in the air. Tiny water droplets or ice crystals form. They are very light. Some need to get 100,000 times heavier before they fall. How do they get bigger? Droplets grow when more water vapor condenses on them. They also grow by crashing into each other and joining together. Droplets swirl around in clouds and grow at different speeds. Scientists are still learning exactly how this happens. Some drops evaporate and become water vapor again. Some get so heavy they cannot stay in the air anymore. It's raining, it's pouring. Rain is precipitation that reaches the ground as water. Many raindrops start out as snow or ice. They melt along the way as they pass through warmer air. Tiny drops that fall close together are called drizzle. 50 drizzle drops side by side measure about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters. Bigger drops that do not fall so close together are called rain. Some people think that raindrops are shaped like tears. They are not. Small drops are shaped like peas. Mid-sized drops are shaped like sandwich buns. Large drops are shaped like lima beans. Cloud clues. Are you a cloud watcher? Do you watch clouds change shape? Do you hunt for ones that look like animals? Scientists watch clouds grow and change too. Changing cloud shapes are clues to what is happening inside the clouds. Clouds help scientists predict the weather. Wispy cirrus clouds form high in the sky. They are made of ice and point to a change in the weather. Gray stratus clouds form closer to the ground. They bring rain and drizzle. Puffy cumulus clouds are fair weather clouds. They can become huge storm clouds that bring rain, snow, and hail, though. Hail, sleet, and snow. Many clouds form every day. Few produce precipitation, though. What makes precipitation fall then? Hail forms when powerful winds toss icy drops up and down in a thundercloud. Water coats them and then turns to ice. They grow layer by layer like an onion, then crash to earth. Sleet is rain that freezes when it passes through cold air near the ground. Snow forms from ice crystals that reach the ground without melting. All precipitation returns water to earth. Rain plays the biggest part in the water cycle. It is the main way water from the atmosphere gets back to earth. Around and around. More water falls on the land than evaporates from it. Some goes into the soil, where plants use it. Some ends up in streams and rivers, which flow to the ocean. Some falls into openings in Earth's crust and moves underground to the ocean. This completes the cycle from ocean to air to land and back to the ocean. It goes around and never stops. All living things need water. The water cycle makes life on Earth possible. Now, do you really wish it would stop raining?
Investigating How Flowers Grow by Ellen Renee. Big discovery. In 1878, a scientist found a monster on a Pacific island. It was huge. He could not put his arms around it. It towered over him. He needed 2 men to carry it. They tied it to a pole and put the pole on their shoulders. The monster stank like rotting meat. The monster's name was Titan Arum. It was a flower. There are tiny flowers, too. A dozen duckweed flowers can fit on the head of a pin. There are many, many kinds of flowers. They come in all sizes, shapes, and colors. All flowers do one job, though. Do you know what it is? Let's find out. What are the parts of a flower? Even though flowers look different, most have the same parts. Flowers sit on top of stems. Stems carry water from roots and food from leaves. Sepals grow where the flower and stem meet. They look like a circle of leaves. Sepals cover buds to keep them safe. After flowers bloom, most sepals are hard to see. Some drop off. Inside the sepals is a circle of petals, the showy parts of flowers. Most are white or brightly colored. Some have special bottoms that make nectar or a sweet juice. Petals are not a flower's real working parts, though. A peek inside. Flowers help plants make new plants. Some plants have male and female flowers. Most have male and female parts in the same flower. The female pistil is in the center. It is rounded at the bottom and is long and thin at the top. Its rounded bottom contains egg cells. Its thin neck or style ends in a tip, called the stigma. Male stamens form a ring around the pistil. The long, thin stamens are stopped by sacs, called anthers. Anthers contain pollen, a yellowish dust made of thousands of tiny grains. How do flowers make seeds? A flower's job is to make seeds. To form seeds, pollen grains and egg cells from the same kind of plant must join or come together. Each holds part of what is needed to make a new plant. When pollen grains land on the right stigma, the grains start to grow. Each grain forms a tube that moves down the style to the egg cells. When the tube reaches an egg cell, they join. This is called pollination, which helps the plant make seeds. Seeds hold tiny new plants and food to help them grow. A food factory? Plants need food to grow, flower, and make seeds. Where do they get food, though? Their leaves change water and carbon dioxide, a gas in the air, into sugars for food. This is called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis needs sunlight and chlorophyll to work. Chlorophyll helps plants use sunlight to make food. It also makes plants look green. How do plants sense when it is time to flower? For a long time, scientists thought plants needed the right amount of daylight to flower. Then they discovered that plants really need the right amount of darkness to flower. Some need more, some need less. Some are not that picky. Water and soil. Like all living things, plants need water. Their roots take up water from the soil. This water contains minerals that get picked up from the soil. Plants need water and minerals to make important chemicals like chlorophyll. Water helps plants stay cool when it evaporates or is given off by leaves as a gas. It also keeps plants firm. If they do not get enough water, they turn brown and die. Soils are not all the same. They hold different amounts of air, water, and minerals. That is one reason plants may grow well in one place but not in another. What else do flowers need? What if plants have everything they need to grow? That means they have plenty of sun, air, water, and soil. Will their flowers make seeds? Not always. Why? What else do they need? Most need helpers to carry pollen from one flower to another. Often insects do the job. Pollen sticks to insects as they go from bloom to bloom in search of food. Along the way, some pollen rubs off. If it lands on a stigma in the right kind of flower, pollination takes place. Some plants pollinate themselves. Others, like trees and grasses, use wind to spread their pollen around. Come and get it. How do flowers get insects to come for a visit? They attract or draw them the same way cookie stores in the mall attract you. They use color, scent, and the promise of food. Insects do not see colors the same way people do. Many insects are attracted to flowers by colors we cannot see. Some flowers have markings that show insects where to land. Mainly, insects come to flowers for nectar. A flower's bright colors and strong scent let them know where to find the nectar. They catch an insect's attention from far away. Some plants do not make nectar. They attract insects that eat pollen. Who are the pollinators? There are many different insects that do the important job of pollinating flowers. Some birds and bats help spread pollen too. Bees visit showy, bright flowers to feed on nectar and pollen. They are important pollinators of flowering fruit trees, such as apple and cherry trees. Butterflies fly from flower to flower during the day. They put their long tongues inside the flowers to sip nectar. They carry bits of pollen from the other plants they have visited. Moths are busy at night. White or pale flowers attract them. Flower power. Flowers add beauty to our world. We enjoy their colors and scents. Their seeds grow into plants we use for food, housing, and clothing. Some flowers are good to eat. Broccoli and cauliflower are both flowers. Scientists can spend a lifetime investigating just one kind of flower. By studying plants and flowers, scientists have found many important medicines or things that can help us feel better when we are sick. Are you good at watching the world around you? Look at a garden. What do you see? Take notes. Draw pictures. Maybe someday you will make a big discovery too.
Growing Vegetables by Luella Bath. Vegetables are important. Has an adult ever told you to eat your vegetables? Most kids might rather eat sweets, but the adults are right. Eating vegetables is very important. Vegetables have nutrients we need to stay healthy. They're also naturally low in calories and fat. Vegetables are one of the best food choices you can make. There are many kinds of vegetables. One way to become familiar with different kinds is to grow them yourself. Vegetable gardening takes some effort, but the hard work is worth it. Even small gardens can produce months of fresh vegetables right in your own backyard. What is a vegetable? Vegetables are plants. Plants have different parts, and each has a special job. Roots keep a plant in the ground. They also take in water and minerals that plants need to grow. Roots are connected to a stem, which keeps the plant standing up. Some plants have an underground stem. Water travels through the stem to other parts of the plant. Leaves take in sunlight and carbon dioxide, which is a gas in the air. Flowers help make more plants. Other plant parts include fruits and bulbs, which are underground buds that store food for plants during winter. A vegetable is the edible part of a plant. If something is edible, that means you can eat it. Vegetables are sorted into groups based on what part of a plant they are. That means when you eat vegetables, you could be eating a root, stem, leaf, bulb, or even flower. Sometimes vegetables look very different from the way you imagine a plant part would look. For example, carrots, parsnips, and beets are roots. Asparagus and celery are stems. Cabbage and kale are leaves. Broccoli and artichokes are flowers, even though they don't look like it. This variety in look, shape, and taste is what makes growing and eating vegetables fun. Getting started. The first step in starting a vegetable garden is picking where you want to plant it. Most vegetables need full sun, which means they need to have between 6 and 8 hours of sun a day. Plants that don't get enough light won't produce as many vegetables as you'd like, so pick a sunny spot. Now that you have a place for your garden, think about how big you want it to be. A good tip is to think small. If your garden is too large, you can have more vegetables than you know what to do with. Starting small is a good way to keep from wasting food. Dig in. The next step in vegetable gardening is preparing your garden beds. The dirt in many backyards isn't good for planting because it may lack important nutrients. It's often too compact or pressed together, which means air can't flow through it easily. Plants grow best in loose, nutrient-rich soil. You must make sure your garden bed has the best soil possible. Start by digging your garden bed. Turn the dirt over with a shovel and break up big chunks with the blade. Now is a good time to add special soils from the store or compost. When you've finished, your soil should be loose, drain well, and be full of nutrients. Raised beds. Many people plant vegetables directly in the ground. However, some gardeners choose to use raised garden beds. A raised garden bed is a garden whose soil rises about 1 foot, (0.3 meters) off the ground. It's surrounded by walls, which are often made of wood. Raised garden beds can make vegetable gardening easy. If the soil in your area is poor, you can fill the raised bed with healthy soil. Also, the soil in a raised bed can warm up faster than soil in the ground. This may give you a few extra weeks to garden in the spring and fall. Time to plant. The best way to choose which vegetables to grow is to think about what you like to eat. That's one way to make sure you enjoy your vegetable garden. Some plants are easy for beginners. Many first-time gardeners have luck with beans, cucumbers, squash, and tomatoes. The kind of vegetables you grow will affect how you plant them. Most vegetables can be planted in straight rows. Some plants, such as pole beans, need a wall or trellis to wrap around as they grow. Every plant is different, so make sure to research how to grow them. Caring for your garden. You have two choices when it comes to planting: sowing seeds directly into the soil and planting seedlings, or baby plants. Growing plants from seeds can be harder than transplanting seedlings. Water your garden well after you've planted it. Cover the seeds and tiny plants with a loose layer of straw to keep birds away. With enough sunlight and water, your tiny plants will soon grow into adult plants. Look closely at your plants as they grow. Flowers can be a sign the plant is getting ready to produce food. Can you see tiny vegetables forming? Veggie time! One of the best parts of planting a vegetable garden is harvesting all your hard work. Keep an eye on your plants to see when your vegetables are ready to be picked. Color is a good sign of ripeness. Tomatoes and peppers are green at first, but they become very colorful as they ripen. Size is another thing to look for when harvesting. Don't pick anything too small, because the best flavor comes from having enough time to grow. However, if you don't pick vegetables when they're ripe, they can rot. The payoff. Months of hard work seem worth it when the reward is a garden full of tasty vegetables. Growing your own food can bring you a lot of joy. You'll learn a lot about growing plants, and you'll get to try many different kinds of food. Having a vegetable garden is a great way to connect with nature. It's a great way to stay healthy, too. Make a salad for dinner or snack on some carrots. Many gardeners will tell you that the food they grow tastes better than what you can buy at the store. Why don't you try it for yourself?
Poke, the Sea Urchin and Other Animals with Spikes by Greg Rosa. Ouch! Millions of years ago, dinosaurs walked on Earth. Many of them were giant and did not have to worry about predators. Others had strong plates to defend themselves. Some dinosaurs used thick spikes to defend themselves. For example, Stegosaurus had long, sharp spikes running the length of its tail. If a predator got too close, it might give it a nasty slap. Modern animals have many ways to defend themselves from predators as well. Just like the Stegosaurus, some are armed with spikes. Get too close, and they will poke. Lots of spikes. Have you ever seen a cactus? It is covered with sharp spikes. Few plant eaters are brave enough to take a bite out of one. Those spikes hurt when they poke. Some wild animals also use spikes to defend themselves. A spiky animal does not generally make a good meal because it can be hard to swallow. Some spikes are large and thick. Others are long and thin. However, all spikes poke and hurt. Some animal spikes, such as those belonging to many sea urchins, have poison in them. The poison can make an animal sick. It can even kill an animal. Stay back. Animals with spikes use them as weapons to defend themselves. They poke their spikes into a predator's body, breaking the predator's skin and causing pain. Animals have different ways of using spikes. When a predator gets too close to a porcupine, the porcupine turns its spikes in the predator's direction. The predator might run into the spikes, or it might get poked trying to bite the porcupine. Some animals, such as the sea urchin, are almost totally covered with spikes. They do not need to move at all. Anywhere a predator tries to bite, spikes are waiting to poke it. Otters and urchins. Spikes cause pain. This helps an animal defend itself in two ways. First, the pain comes suddenly and causes a predator to stop attacking and run away. Second, predators that have been poked remember that pain and think twice about trying to attack that animal again. They will likely even teach their young to avoid animals with spikes. While spikes are great at keeping most predators away, some animals have figured out how to get past them. For example, sea otters know exactly how to eat sea urchins. They flip the urchins over and bite them where the spikes are much shorter. Sea urchin. Sea urchins have hard, round bodies. They can be many different colors. All are covered with long, sharp spikes, though. They also have several tube feet that they use to move around on the seafloor. These tube feet have suckers and sharp teeth that sea urchins use to defend themselves. The spikes of many sea urchins are poisonous. If a predator attacks one of these sea urchins, the spikes pierce its skin and send poison into its blood. The spikes can also break off in the predator. The poison causes pain. Numerous spikes can cause weakness, paralysis, and even death. Pufferfish. Pufferfish are not good swimmers. They move slowly and are easily caught by predators. However, they have a special way of defending themselves. Pufferfish can quickly suck water into their bodies and make themselves big and round. It is hard to eat a big, round, spiky balloon. Some pufferfish are covered with spikes, which makes them extra hard to catch and eat. Pufferfish pose another danger. Many of these fish are poisonous to eat. The poisons in these pufferfish's organs can cause paralysis. They can also stop a predator's lungs and heart from working. Porcupine. There are about 24 kinds of porcupines. All of them have spikes called quills. The quills on a porcupine's back, side, and tail normally lie flat. When the porcupine senses danger, the quills rise up. People once thought porcupines could shoot their quills, but that is not true. However, the quills fall out easily when touched. They often stick in a predator as it runs for cover. The end of a quill has barbs on it. This makes it hard to remove once it is stuck in a predator's skin. Porcupines grow new quills to replace the ones they lose. Thorny devil. Thorny devils are lizards. They have colors that help them blend in with the sand and rocks of the Australian deserts where they live. When a predator is near, a thorny devil stands still and is very hard to see. The lizard can also tuck its head between its legs to show its false head, which is a spiky bump on its back. Predators mistake the false head for the real one. This gives the lizard a chance to escape. Thorny devils also have spiky bodies. These hard, sharp spikes make some predators think twice about trying to eat the thorny devil. Don't get poked. Every year, many people step on poisonous sea urchins when they walk into shallow waters where the animals are resting. Some people pick up urchins without knowing what they are and how poisonous they can be. Sometimes divers pick them up by mistake. Sea urchin pokes can be very dangerous. They often get infected. Porcupine quills are not poisonous. They are very painful, though. Porcupines can leave hundreds of quills in a person. If you ever come across a porcupine, back away as quickly as you can. Fun facts. 1. Sea urchins might be spiky, but that does not stop some people from eating them. They are often eaten raw without the spikes. 2. Sea urchins are closely related to sand dollars, sea cucumbers, and starfish. They are all members of a group called echinoderms, which is Greek for spiny-skinned. 3. The red sea urchin can live for up to 200 years. This is the longest living animal on Earth. 4. In Japan, fugu or pufferfish is a very expensive dish. Specially trained cooks are needed to prepare the fish because if it is prepared wrong, it can kill. In fact, many diners die of pufferfish poisoning each year. 5. One porcupine can have as many as 30,000 quills. 6. The thorny devil uses its spikes to defend itself. It has another use for them too, though. When it rains, the spaces between the spikes guide rainwater to its mouth. Seeds, Bulbs, and Sprouts by Devi Puri. Understanding Plant Parts. If there's anyone who's familiar with how plants live and grow, it's gardeners. Gardeners use simple science to create beautiful landscapes. They know that sunlight, water, and air, as well as hard work, can turn tiny seeds into full-grown plants. As they grow, plants go through different life stages. Seeds are one of them. Sprouts are another. Some plants contain all their life stages in a structure called a bulb. Each of these plant stages is special, and gardeners must know how to handle them. Understanding the science behind seeds, bulbs, and sprouts is one of the first steps to having a great garden. All about seeds. Gardeners have many choices when it comes to deciding what to plant. If you're a first-time gardener, you may have fun experimenting with plants in different stages of their lives. The first stage, of course, is a seed. A seed is a tiny, hard object. Seeds come in many different shapes, colors, and sizes. Some seeds are hard, and others are soft. Some seeds can be eaten, while eating others could make you sick. It depends on what kind of plant the seed comes from. Even though all seeds are different, they share the same basic features. Parts of a seed. A seed contains everything a plant needs to grow. That includes a tiny plant called an embryo, as well as the food the embryo needs. In flowering plants, this food is called endosperm. The embryo and endosperm are very important. A seed can't produce a plant if these parts are damaged or hurt. However, the seed coat or outer covering keeps this from happening. The seed coat protects the tiny plant from harm. In your garden, a seed could be harmed by bad weather or an animal looking for food. A gardener who steps on a seed could crush the baby plant without a seed coat to protect it. Growing seeds. Seeds come from flowers and fruits. The flowers in your garden may drop seeds, which can be used to grow more plants. You can buy seed packets at the store or from the internet. You can also ask a fellow gardener to do a seed swap. Once you have seeds, you can plant them directly in the ground or in pots. Many gardeners use seed starting trays. They're made of small squares that each hold a seed. Gardeners like using trays because they can control the warmth and light the seeds get. It also allows gardeners to start plants before the weather is warm enough to plant outside. Germination. Once a seed germinates, the tiny plant grows up toward the surface of your garden. Its roots grow down into the soil. You should see tiny plants poking through the soil a few days or weeks after you plant seeds. These tiny plants are called sprouts. A sprout looks like the plant that will grow in your garden, but smaller. Sprouts have a stem and tiny leaves called true leaves. The leaves begin the process of photosynthesis. This is when the leaves take in sunlight and carbon dioxide, which is a gas in the air. Plants combine them with water and nutrients from the soil to make food for the plant. Caring for sprouts. Sprouts are very delicate, so you must handle them with care. The roots, stems, and leaves aren't strong enough yet to hold up against something harmful. What harms sprouts? People or animals stepping on sprouts can kill them. Too much water can drown the roots. Too much cold can hurt them too. Once your garden has sprouted, you may notice some areas have more sprouts than others. Empty areas mean the seeds you planted there didn't germinate. That's okay. Carefully dig up some sprouts and transplant them to the empty areas. That way, each sprout has enough room to grow. Beautiful bulbs. Most plants have a life cycle that begins with a seed, which grows into a sprout and then into an adult plant. These stages are easy to see. Bulbs are different. Bulbs are plants whose whole life cycle is stored in a structure that grows underground. True bulbs have 5 parts. Roots grow from the bottom. They take in water and nutrients. Fleshy scales store food for the bulb. A covering called a tunic protects the scales. Bulblets grow off the main structure to make more bulbs. Finally, bulbs have a shoot. It holds the part of the plant we see above ground. Caring for bulbs. The way you plant bulbs is different from how you normally garden. For starters, bulbs are planted in the fall. They can be planted up until the ground freezes. However, it's still important to make sure your soil is healthy and full of nutrients. Plant bulbs between 6 and 8 inches, 15 centimeters and 20 centimeters deep in the ground. Cover them with soil, then wait. You won't see your plants until spring. During this time, the bulbs become dormant. When the soil warms, the bulbs come to life. The shoots grow above ground, sending leaves and a flower with them. Planning your garden. Now that you know the basics of seeds, bulbs, and sprouts, how can you choose what to do with them? Start by thinking about what kind of garden you'd like to grow. If you're set on growing plants from seeds, vegetable gardening can be a good place to start. Many beginning gardeners have luck with beans, carrots, and peas. Some gardeners prefer to begin with sprouts or seedlings. It can be easier and faster than waiting for seeds to germinate. Bulbs are a good choice for gardeners who want to save money because they only need to be planted once. They come back every year. Get digging. Understanding plant parts is important to becoming a good gardener. If you don't know how a seed germinates, you may not give it all the water and light it needs. Without understanding how bulbs wake up after a winter of being dormant, you may plant them in an area where soil doesn't get warm enough. Handling sprouts too roughly won't allow them to grow. However, it only takes a little bit of effort to become familiar with each of these special plant parts. Once you do, your garden will be bigger and better than you could have ever imagined.
We Need Worms by Amy Hayes. We need worms. Have you ever seen worms squirming around on the sidewalk after a rainstorm? Maybe you've seen worms in a garden, moving through the dirt. With no arms and no legs, you might not think these little creatures have a big impact on the world around them. However, worms are an important part of their ecosystem. Everything in nature, from the grass that grows to the birds singing up in the trees, depends on worms. We need worms for flowers, crops, and trees to grow. Let's dig in to learn more about worms. What are worms anyway? Worms found in the ground are called earthworms. Some people believe there are around 3,000 species or types of earthworms. Others believe there are more than 7,000. Worms are invertebrates, which means they have no spine or backbone. They're made up of segments or parts called annuli. The first segment holds their mouth. Earthworms can live in soil, but also in puddles and under rocks and logs. There are 3 main types of earthworms: litter dwellers, topsoil dwellers, and subsoil dwellers. They're named for the soil areas where they make their home. Each of the earthworm types helps the environment in different ways. Where are worms? The 3 main types of worms are divided by where they live in the soil. Litter dwellers live on and above the ground. They live in leaves, grass, and compost piles. They like warm, wet areas and don't eat a lot of soil. Topsoil dwellers live in the first 2 to 3 inches, 5 to 7.6 centimeters of soil. They burrow sideways throughout the soil. Subsoil dwellers burrow straight down into the soil, sometimes as far as 5 to 6 feet, 1.5 to 1.8 meters. They keep their burrows open so they can return to the surface. Hard-working burrowers. Earthworms create pockets of air as they burrow through the soil. The pockets of air help break up the soil, which makes it easier for plants to grow. The air pockets also make it easier for rain to settle in the ground. When it rains, water falls through the soil and gathers in the small burrows. The water makes the dirt soft and wet, which is good for growing plants. The air pockets made by worms also help prevent flooding. If it rains hard, the rainwater collects throughout the soil instead of sitting on top of the ground or running off. Mixing up the soil. When worms move through the soil, they end up eating many microorganisms and lots of dirt. Worms drag soil along with them as they tunnel through the ground. Subsoil dwellers move deep into the earth. They can bring up lots of new dirt that hasn't been close to the surface for years. By mixing the soil, earthworms spread out nutrients. This makes the soil healthier for plants. Many people think worms help completely change the makeup of the first 6 inches, 15 centimeters of soil every 10 to 20 years. Without them, the soil wouldn't be healthy and plants couldn't grow well. Recycling remains. When plants and animals die, their remains are full of nutrients that are an important part of the ecosystem. Decomposition is a process that makes those nutrients available to living things again. Worms are an important part of decomposition. As a worm burrows through the soil, it eats remains. As it eats, it breaks down the nutrients into smaller pieces. The worm's waste is then full of small, easily available nutrients. The nutrients in the worm's waste are then ready to be recycled by microorganisms. Worms are so important to decomposition that people buy worms to put in their compost piles to help the compost decompose. Part of the food web. Food webs are a way to show connections among plants and animals. We call them webs because all plants and animals in an ecosystem depend on one another. Worms don't just help the ecosystem with soil or decomposition. Worms are an important part of the food web as prey, or animals that are eaten by other animals. Just as worms eat nutrients from soil, other animals eat worms for the nutrients they need. Birds, beetles, and even small mammals, such as moles, eat worms. Some endangered land snails in New Zealand depend on worms as a source of food. An earthworm's home. Earthworms do well in lots of environments. However, there are certain things worms need. Most of all, worms need a damp or somewhat wet place to live. They lose a lot of water through their skin, so they need to live in a wet environment. Worms go into hibernation, or a deep sleep-like state, if it gets too cold. Worms like to live in temperatures between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 and 15.5 degrees Celsius. Worms also need certain types of food. They like to eat manure, as well as bits of leaves and other types of plants. Humans causing harm. People have made big changes to the world around them. Farms, cities, gardens, and lawns all exist because people put them there. When people make changes to their environment, it can harm other animals. Worms are sometimes harmed by the changes people make. When farmers use the same piece of land over and over again for the same crop, it changes the soil. Some crops don't add the right nutrients to the soil and are bad for worms. They stop burrowing and helping out the soil. Certain types of pesticides can also hurt worms, though there are many that are safe to use. How can we help? Luckily, worms are pretty amazing creatures. When humans create environments where worms can live, they will thrive. Farmers love worms because of how good they are for soil and crops. Farmers can make nice environments for worms by switching where crops are planted regularly and trying to use pesticides that are safe for worms to be around. Worms prevent flooding, mix soil together, break down nutrients, and are prey for other animals. Next time you see a worm crawling in the dirt, think about all the things it does to help the environment around it.
Endangered Animals of Asia by Marie Algor. Welcome to Asia. Asia is Earth's biggest continent. Half the people in the world live there. The countries of China and India each have more than 1 billion people living in them. All these people need places to live and work to do. People cut down forests and burn plant life to make room for homes and businesses. Doing these things has caused many animal species in Asia to become endangered. This book will show you some of Asia's endangered animals. You will learn why these animals are endangered and what is being done to save Asia's animals. Asia's climate. Climate is the weather in a place over a long time. Asia has every kind of climate that happens on Earth. The climate in the center of Asia has cold winters and hot summers. Asia has a hot, dry climate in the southwest, and Arctic temperatures in the north. Asia has hot, rainy climates too. In Southeast Asia, the temperature is around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 27 degrees Celsius year-round. Places with this climate get between 60 and 100 inches, 152 to 254 centimeters of rain each year. There are many plants and animals in the rainforests there. There are also a large number of endangered species. Habitats in Asia. Asia has many different habitats. Reindeer eat mosses and lichens on Asia's tundra, which is a cold, treeless habitat. Bears, birds, and otters live in the taiga habitat south of the tundra. The cool, dry, grassy plains called steppes are hard places to live, but rodents, bugs, and lizards make their homes there. There are hot, dry desert habitats. There are warm, wet rainforest habitats too. Many of Asia's natural habitats have been taken over by people. As people build homes in or take natural resources from these habitats, they change and sometimes destroy them. Habitat destruction is one of the greatest enemies of Asia's animals. Save the pandas. The giant panda is part of the bear family. It lives in a few mountain ranges in central China. Pandas used to live in lowlands too. However, people cleared lowland forests to make way for farms and homes. Pandas' thick black and white fur keeps them warm as they look for food in their cool habitat. The panda spends up to 16 hours a day eating. This is because it mostly eats bamboo, which is hard to digest. To get enough energy from this food, the bears must eat up to 40 pounds, 18 kilograms of it a day. Snow leopards in trouble. Snow leopards are beautiful wild cats. They make their homes in the mountains of Central Asia, from Afghanistan up through Mongolia and throughout much of China. Because their fur is so beautiful, snow leopards are often hunted for their skin. People also use snow leopard bones in medicines. Snow leopards are endangered for other reasons too. The food they like to eat is not as plentiful as it once was. This means there is not enough food to support large populations of this hunter. People are also taking over snow leopards' habitat. There are between 3,500 and 7,000 of these animals left in the wild. Help the proboscis monkey. The proboscis monkey is known for its large nose. When these monkeys become excited or angry, their noses get bigger and redder. They use their noses to make different sounds. This monkey is found only on the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia. It lives mostly in mangrove forests by rivers and streams. The monkeys use the mangroves as homes. They also eat the tree's leaves along with some fruit and seeds. Mangrove forests are disappearing as people cut down trees and move into these places. The proboscis monkeys are disappearing too. Only about 7,000 of these monkeys remain in the wild. Komodo dragons in danger. Komodo dragons are huge, powerful lizards. These 10-foot, 3-meter-long reptiles eat nearly anything. This includes dead animals, deer, pigs, and other Komodo dragons. If the Komodo dragon's bite does not kill its prey, its venom soon will. These animals live on small islands in Indonesia. Komodo dragons are at home in the forests, grasslands, and coasts there. There are fewer than 5,000 Komodo dragons living in the wild. For some reason, most of these Komodo dragons are males. This makes it hard for male Komodo dragons to find female mates. Asian crested ibises. Asian crested ibises were once widespread in far eastern Russia, Japan, and China. They are now extinct in most of these places. They remain in only one place in central China. In the 1970s, people thought these ibises were extinct. However, in 1981, 7 birds were found. Chinese scientists worked hard to save the birds' habitat. They also raised birds in captivity. Some have also been raised in captivity in Japan and then let out into the wild. By 2002, there were 130 of these birds. Today it is believed the wild population is about 250 birds, with more living in captivity. Save Asia's animals. You might wonder why it is important to save endangered species. Many of the animals that are endangered are important to the health of their habitats. The good news is that people in Asia and other places are starting to see how important it is to keep the wild animals there safe. Countries in Asia have set aside lands to keep some of these animals safe. Zoos work to teach people and to breed endangered species that can sometimes be put back into the wild. Even with all this work, Asia's endangered animals still need our help. Asia's endangered animals. Many of Asia's animals are endangered. If things do not change, some of these animals could one day become extinct. 1. Proboscis monkey. Proboscis monkeys generally live in groups of around 12. They sit in branches over water. They can jump into the water and swim away from any animals that want to eat them. 2. Orangutan. Orangutans live in Borneo and Sumatra. They are endangered because of habitat loss, hunting, and the pet trade. Scientists guess that orangutans could be extinct in the wild in 10 to 20 years. 3. Komodo dragon. Komodo dragons are the largest lizards on Earth. These fearsome hunters run quickly, climb trees, and swim. 4. Snow leopard. A snow leopard is a powerful cat. It can jump as far as 50 feet, 15 meters, and can kill prey that is 3 times its weight. 5. Asian crested ibis. In 1981, there were only 7 Asian crested ibises left in the world. Luckily, with people taking an interest in this bird, its numbers are now up to more than 250 birds. Snails are gross. By Lee Rockwood. Slow and creepy. Snails are slimy, slow-moving animals that are found throughout the world. They live in fresh water, in salt water, and on land. A snail's body is basically a foot, a head, and a shell. A snail crawls along by wiggling its foot. As it does this, the snail's body makes mucus that helps it move. This gross mucus leaves a trail of slime behind the snail wherever it goes. How slow is a snail? The garden snail is the world's slowest animal. It moves at about 0.03 mile per hour, 0.05 kilometers per hour. At that speed, it would take a snail more than a day to go the length of a football field. Slimy body. The snail belongs to a group of mollusks called gastropods. Most of its soft, boneless body is made up of a foot. The head is at the front of the body. This is where the snail's mouth and antennae are. There are 2 pairs of antennae. The longer pair has eye spots, which the snail uses to see. The shorter pair is used for its senses of touch and smell. A snail's shell helps keep its body safe. A snail can crawl into its shell when the weather is too hot or too cold. It can also crawl into its shell if it is in danger from an animal that wants to eat it. Types of snails. There are thousands of snail species in the world. You may have seen snails on the ground. Did you know, though, that there are also snails that live in rivers, lakes, and oceans? Snails that live in water breathe using gills. Snails that live on land breathe using simple lungs. Snails come in many sizes. The smallest snails are less than 0.02 inch, 0.5 millimeters long. One of the world's largest snails lives in the seas near Australia and is about 2 feet, 61 centimeters long. The world's largest land snail is the giant African snail, which can be about 15.5 inches, 39 centimeters long, and weigh about 2 pounds, 907 grams. Snail habitats. Most land snails live in the soil and among the plants of habitats that are not too cool and not too dry. These snails have dull-colored shells. This helps them blend in with their habitats and keep away from predators that want to eat them. Different species of sea snails live throughout the world's seas and oceans. Most live in tidal waters. These are places close to shore that are underwater only at certain times of the day. Freshwater snails live in flowing rivers and streams, as well as in the still water of lakes and ponds. Life cycle. Land snails hatch from eggs. When they hatch, the baby snails look like tiny adults. However, unlike adult snails, they have very soft shells. Snails reach adulthood when they are about 2 years old. Adult snails have both male and female parts. Before the 2 snails mate, they cover each other in slime. Then each snail fertilizes the eggs in its own body with the help of the other snail. Each snail lays about 100 eggs. Generally, the eggs are laid just under the soil. Between 2 and 4 weeks later, the eggs hatch. How does a snail make its shell? It has a body part called a mantle. The mantle lets out a liquid. As this liquid dries, it hardens into a shell. As the mantle keeps letting out this liquid, the shell builds up and gets bigger. Snacking snails. Land snails eat mostly rotting plants. Gross! They also eat living plants and tree bark. Freshwater snails eat rotting plants as well as algae. Some species also eat dead animals that are in the water. Most sea snails eat algae. A few species of snails hunt and kill other animals for food. The whelk is a sea snail that eats clams. The whelk grabs the clam in its foot. Then it forces the clam's shell open and eats the clam. A snail eats its food using its radula. The radula is a tongue-like body part that has tiny tooth-like parts called denticles. As the denticles wear down, new ones take their places. Giant African snails. Giant African snails are land snails that live in eastern Africa. They can be as large as 15.5 inches, 39 centimeters long, and weigh 2 pounds, 907 grams. But most are about half that size. These snails eat almost any plant they see. They also eat small rocks and the paint on the outsides of houses. It is against the law in the United States to have giant African snails as pets. They can carry germs that make people sick. There is another problem with these snails too. If they are put into the wild in habitats where they do not belong, they can hurt the plants in that habitat. This can then have an effect on the animals in that habitat. That's what shells are for. Snails are much too slow to run away from their predators. When they are in danger, they do the next best thing. They curl up in their shells to keep themselves safe. Some snails use their feet to close off the shell's opening. Other snails use their slime to seal themselves in. Snails also close themselves inside their shells when the weather is too hot or too dry. The snail's body then goes into a slowed down state called estivation. During a period of estivation, a snail will not need much food or water. It can stay like this for days, weeks, or even months. Snails in the food chain. Snails have many predators such as bugs, birds, frogs, fish, snakes, and even people. However, the fact that many animals eat snails makes them an important part of the food chains to which they belong. Now that you know more about snails, you can try to find them where you live. If you find a snail's shell, you will know how the snail made it. If you see a trail of mucus, there might just be a slimy snail nearby. How Pigeons and Other Animals Sense Magnetic Fields by Ryan Nagelhout. The view up there. Animals have some amazing abilities, some of which scientists are just beginning to understand. A bird's ability to fly is amazing on its own, but some birds, such as pigeons, are even more special. They always find their way back to their nest, no matter how far away they travel. Some scientists think pigeons use magnetic fields to find their way from place to place. What are magnetic fields, and how do they work? Can pigeons really sense magnetic fields, or does something else help them navigate the skies? What other animals also have this special sense? Study the birds. We don't know exactly how pigeons travel long distances to find home. People have used and studied pigeons for thousands of years. People have trained pigeons, called homing pigeons, to fly faster and travel longer distances before returning home. Some people even use pigeons in races. Pigeons can fly as far as 1,118 miles, 1,800 kilometers, during a race. Scientists have tested pigeons' abilities to find out why they're so good at navigating. Recently, they found a number of adaptations they think could allow pigeons to sense and use magnetic fields to navigate. The map and compass. Earth's core is filled with superhot liquid iron, which is a metal that moves deep under Earth's outer layer or crust. That moving liquid iron creates an electric current which surrounds Earth and forms a magnetic field. This magnetic field allows people to use a compass to figure out which direction is north. Scientists think pigeons have a natural compass inside their body that helps them sense Earth's magnetic field. Pigeons then compare this information to a stored map of the area in their brain made from information about their surroundings. How they use this compass and make this map, though, is something scientists are still trying to understand. Using their heads. One theory used to explain pigeon magnetoreception is that they have tiny bits of metal in their head that can detect magnetic fields. In 2012, Scientists found tiny grains of iron inside hair cells in a pigeon's inner ears that may be used to sense Earth's magnetic field. Another theory is that pigeons can smell what direction they're traveling. Birds have many iron-rich cells in their beak. Some scientists believe the nerve that joins the beak to the brain may control a pigeon's sense of direction. Scientists have tested whether these bits of metal in the beak help pigeons navigate, but those tests had mixed results. Keaton's lost pigeons. William T. Keaton was the first leader of a group of scientists studying homing pigeons in New York State from 1968 to 1987. They let thousands of pigeons go in many different places throughout the state. Many came back, but one journey, a 74-mile, 119-kilometer trip from Jersey Hill to Ithaca, caused about 900 birds to completely disappear. However, on August 13, 1969, all the pigeons that were let go at Jersey Hill flew back to Ithaca with no problems at all. Sadly, Keaton died in 1980 before figuring out what stopped the birds from finding their way home from Jersey Hill, except on that one date. The sound of the sea. A scientist named Jonathan T. Hagstrom believed he figured out what happened to Keaton's pigeons. In the 1970s, lab tests found that pigeons can detect infrasounds, which are frequencies lower than humans are able to hear. Hagstrom believed pigeons use infrasounds made by the ocean to find home. Hagstrom mapped the infrasound waves around Jersey Hill and discovered the waves skipped right over it. Keaton's pigeons were being sent into a zone of silence, or an area between sound waves bending up and bending down as they traveled in the air. However, not all scientists support Hagstrom's theory that pigeons use infrasounds to navigate. Finding the way. Scientists also think the sun can affect how pigeons home or find their way back to their nest. Solar storms happen when charged particles from the sun are sent into space. When these particles get close to Earth, they can change Earth's magnetic field. Even small changes to Earth's magnetic field can make it harder or even impossible for pigeons to navigate. Pigeon racers and other people who use or train homing pigeons often check with experts about when solar storms will happen. They don't want to send their pigeons out when there's a chance they might not come back. Air and ground. Pigeons aren't the only birds that can sense Earth's magnetic field. Many birds use it to migrate to warmer places during the winter months. Scientists have studied the European robin's ability to detect magnetic fields. While some believe it uses bits of magnetic metal called magnetite in its head, others have a different idea. Some scientists think the bird has two molecules next to one another in its eyes that each have an extra electron. This is called a radical pair. Radical pairs in these birds' eyes could allow them to sense magnetic fields. In the water. Many animals that live in water can sense magnetic fields too. Rainbow trout can swim more than 180 miles, 290 kilometers, away from their home for up to 3 years before finding their way back. Trout have great eyesight and sense of smell, but they also have magnetic cells in their noses. These cells detect Earth's magnetic field and help guide the way home. The cells act like tiny compass needles. Scientists have also studied magnetoreception in animals such as lobsters, red-spotted newts, and sea turtles. They believe these animals can also sense magnetic fields in order to migrate and find home. More to explore. Though we don't know for sure how pigeons and other animals navigate Earth so well, scientists believe magnetic fields play at least some part in it. Whether pigeons see, hear, or smell Earth's magnetic field is something scientists are still working hard to figure out. People can affect Earth's magnetic field, which would then affect the way pigeons and other animals use that magnetic field to navigate. One study found that waves from radios affect the compass inside birds. Scientists are currently working to learn more about the ways people affect this magnetic sense in animals. Endangered Animals of South America by Marie Algor. Welcome to South America. South America is the fourth largest continent on Earth. Made up of 12 countries, it is bordered by the Pacific Ocean in the west and the Atlantic Ocean to the east. North America and the Caribbean Sea lie to its north. Many different plant and animal species live in South America. However, more than 370 million people live in South America too. These people need roads and places to live and work. They find the land and natural resources they need in the same places where many of these animals live. Because of this, many of South America's animals are endangered. South America's climate. South America has many different climate zones. More than half of South America has a tropical climate, which is warm and wet year-round. South America has hot, dry places too. The hottest place in South America is in Argentina. It once reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 49 degrees Celsius there. The wettest place on the continent is Colombia, which gets as much as 350 inches, 889 centimeters of rain each year. South America has cold weather on its high mountaintops and at its southern tip. It also has places that are temperate, or not too hot or too cold. Habitats in South America. South America has many different types of habitats, in which many different plants and animals live. For example, vicuñas, spectacled bears, and Andean iguanas live in the mountain habitat of the Andes. South America is home to the world's largest rainforest, the Amazon. Some of the animals there are caimans, anacondas, jaguars, birds, and monkeys. It might sound like South America's animals have plenty of places to live. However, people are destroying South America's natural habitats every day. For example, 20% of the Amazon rainforest has been destroyed in the past 40 years. More is cut down or burned every year. Brazilian three-banded armadillo. The Brazilian three-banded armadillo is not like other armadillos. It does not dig burrows as other armadillos do. It also has a special skill that most armadillos do not have. When in danger, it rolls itself into an armored ball. This special skill makes it very easy for people to catch it. It was hunted so heavily that the species almost disappeared. In fact, it was believed to be extinct for many years. Luckily, a small number of these animals were found in the early 1990s. This species is in trouble due to habitat loss and to people who hunt the animal for meat. Golden lion tamarin. In the 1960s, the golden lion tamarin was listed as critically endangered. In 1992, there were only about 272 of these monkeys living in their natural habitat in Brazil's rainforests. Conservation groups worked together to start captive breeding programs to help these tamarins. There are now more than 1,000 golden lion tamarins in the wild. They are still endangered, though. The golden lion tamarin is endangered mostly due to habitat destruction. Because so much of Brazil's rainforests have been cut down, tamarins live in small groups far away from each other. This makes it hard for tamarins to find other groups so that they can make babies. Hyacinth macaw. Hyacinth macaws are a kind of parrot. They are named for their beautiful blue color. These macaws live in open woodlands and palm swamps in Brazil. They do not generally live in the thicker parts of rainforests. They eat fruits, seeds, and some small animals. Hyacinth macaws are endangered mostly because of the pet trade. This means people catch these birds to be sold as pets. People also hunt them for their meat and their feathers. They are also in danger because their habitat is being taken over or destroyed by people to make land for animals or farms. Golden poison dart frog. Poison dart frogs are tiny frogs that live in the rainforests of Central and South America. They are known for their bright colors and for the poison in their skin. Many of these small frogs are endangered, including the golden poison dart frog. The golden poison dart frog is a golden yellow frog. The poison in its skin is so strong that one frog has enough poison to kill 10 people. This frog is endangered because people have destroyed its habitat for logging and farms. They have also used pesticides on their crops, which have killed many of these frogs. Three-toed sloth. Sloths are slow-moving animals that live in the rainforests of Central and South America. They hang from branches using their long claws and strong arms. They spend most of their time in trees, and most of that time is spent sleeping. They sleep for up to 20 hours a day. They eat leaves and fruit from the branches where they hang. There are 6 species of sloths in the world. 2 species are two-toed sloths, and 4 species are three-toed sloths. 2 species of the three-toed sloths are endangered because their forest homes are being cut down. Save South America's animals. South America is an important place for biodiversity on Earth. Yet people are destroying it. People have been cutting down forests, dirtying or damming rivers, and changing the land of South America. Luckily, people have begun to understand how important the habitats in South America are. Lands have been set aside that are just for plants and animals. Captive breeding programs help put animals back into their natural homes. Much still needs to be done. Every day, more species become endangered. We must save South America's animals. South America's endangered animals. South America is a beautiful place with many rich habitats. However, many of its animals are endangered. The animals are endangered and could one day become extinct. 1. Brazilian three-banded armadillo. As its name tells you, the Brazilian three-banded armadillo lives in Brazil. Over the past 10 to 12 years, its numbers have dropped by more than 1/3. 2. Golden poison dart frog. The golden poison dart frog lives in only